Picture this. You're trapped in an abandoned ranger station during the worst blizzard in decades. The heating's failed, the radio's dead, and outside, something is hunting you through the storm. But here's the problem. You're not alone. The man pressed against you in the darkness isn't just your sworn enemy. He's the rival alpha whose pack has been at war with yours for generations. His scent fills the cramped space, his heartbeat thunders against your back, and every breath you take pulls you deeper under his spell. The mate bond is awakening whether you want it or not. They can't escape each other, or the mate bond pulling them closer with every breath. Chapter 1. Into the Storm. The first snowflake hit Kira Blackthorn's windshield like a warning shot. She cursed under her breath, gripping the steering wheel tighter as her Jeep struggled up the mountain road. The weather report had called for light flurries, not the wall of white now bearing down on the Cascade Mountains. But then again, when had anything gone according to plan lately? Her phone buzzed against the passenger seat. She didn't need to look to know it was another message from her father, demanding updates on her reconnaissance mission into Silvermoon territory. Alpha Marcus Blackthorn didn't accept failure, especially not from his daughter and heir apparent. Find their weakness, he'd commanded 3 days ago. The Silvermoon pack has been expanding their borders. We need leverage before they push into our hunting grounds. What her father didn't know was that Kira had found something far more dangerous than territorial expansion plans. Hidden in the Silvermoon's financial records she'd obtained through less than legal means, was evidence of a massive arms deal. Not just any weapons, but silver-laced ammunition designed specifically to kill werewolves. The question wasn't whether the Silvermoon pack was planning war. It was when. A gust of wind rocked her Jeep, and Kira's wolf stirred uneasily beneath her skin. The storm was moving faster than natural weather patterns should allow. Her enhanced senses picked up something else in the air, a scent that made her hackles rise. Silvermoon. She was being followed. Kira pressed harder on the accelerator, but the Jeep's tires began to slip on the rapidly accumulating snow. The mountain road twisted ahead of her, and visibility dropped to mere yards. Her wolf's night vision helped, but not enough. Not in this. In her rearview mirror, headlights appeared like glowing eyes through the storm. Shit. She fumbled for her phone, trying to call for backup, but the screen showed no signal. The mountains had always been a dead zone for cell service, and the storm was making it worse. The headlights behind her were gaining. Kira took the next curve too fast. Her back wheels fishtailed, and for a heart-stopping moment, the Jeep tilted toward the steep drop-off that bordered the road. She corrected, overcorrected, and felt the vehicle slide sideways. The world spun. Metal screamed against rock. Then everything went dark. When Kira regained consciousness, the first thing she noticed was the cold. The second was the scent. Pine and leather. Wood smoke and something indefinably male. It was a scent that should have repulsed her, should have triggered every defensive instinct her pack had bred into her. Instead, it made her wolf purr. Finally awake. The voice was deep, rough around the edges, with just a hint of concern that he was trying to hide. Kira's eyes snapped open. She was lying on a narrow cot in what appeared to be an old ranger station. Weak light filtered through frost-covered windows, and she could hear the howl of wind outside. But none of that mattered as much as the man sitting in a chair across from her. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that looked like he'd been running his hands through it. His face was all sharp angles and hard lines, except for his mouth, which was surprisingly soft. Gray eyes watched her with an intensity that made her want to squirm, or pounce. She couldn't decide which. Those eyes belonged to Darius Silvermoon, alpha of the pack that had been her family's enemy since before she was born. Kira shot upright, ignoring the way her head spun. Her hand went instinctively to her hip, where her knife should have been. Looking for this? Darius held up her silver-edged blade, turning it slowly in the firelight. I also found your gun, your backup gun, and 3 other weapons I'm honestly impressed you managed to hide on your body. Give them back. Her voice came out rougher than she intended. I don't think so. He leaned back in his chair, but his posture remained alert. Ready. You were unconscious for 6 hours. I could have killed you a dozen times over, but instead I pulled you from your wrecked jeep, brought you here, and made sure you weren't bleeding internally. A thank you might be nice. Kira swung her legs over the side of the cot, testing her balance. Everything seemed to work, though her left shoulder ached. Thank you for not murdering me while I was unconscious. Now give me my weapons and tell me what you want. Darius's laugh was low and dangerous. What I want. He stood, and she was reminded of just how much larger he was than her. How much stronger. I want to know why the Blackthorn Princess was sneaking around my territory. I want to know what you found in those files you hacked from my accountant's computer. And I want to know why my wolf has been going insane ever since I caught your scent. The last admission hung in the air between them like a challenge. Kira's pulse quickened, though she tried to hide it. I don't know what you're talking about. Liar. He took a step closer. You feel it too, don't you?
She did.
God help her, she did. The mate bond was like a live wire between them, growing stronger with every breath. Her wolf wanted to bare her throat to him, wanted to press close and breathe in more of that intoxicating scent. Instead, she crossed her arms and glared. The only thing I feel is the urge to put as much distance between us as possible. Well, that's going to be a problem. Darius moved to the window, pulling back a corner of the heavy curtain. Because we're not going anywhere for a while. Kira followed his gaze and felt her heart sink. The world outside was a wall of white. Snow had drifted halfway up the windows, and the wind was howling with a ferocity that made the old building creak and groan. The storm's been getting worse for hours, Darius continued. Weather Service is calling it the blizzard of the century. Roads are impassable, and it's supposed to last at least 3 days. 3 days. Trapped in a tiny ranger station with her family's sworn enemy. With the man who made her wolf sing and her human heart race with terror and something far more dangerous. There's got to be another way out, she said, more to herself than to him. There isn't. His voice was quiet now, almost gentle. I've already checked. Radio's dead, phones don't work, and even if we could shift and run, we'd freeze to death before we made it a mile in this weather. Kira closed her eyes, fighting the panic rising in her chest. This was bad. Worse than bad. Her father would assume the Silvermoon Pack had captured or killed her. The evidence she'd found about the weapons deal was still in her jeep, if it hadn't been buried under 10 feet of snow. And then there was the other problem. The one standing 6 feet away, watching her with those storm-gray eyes. So what now? She asked. Darius was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was carefully controlled. Now we wait. We try not to kill each other. And we pretend we can't feel what's happening between us. But even as he said it, Kira could see the lie in his eyes. The mate bond wasn't something they could ignore or wish away. It was primal, inevitable, and growing stronger by the hour. Outside, the wind howled like a beast in pain, and somewhere in the distance, Kira thought she heard the sound of wolves singing their ancient songs to the storm. She just hoped they'd live long enough to hear the end of it. Chapter 2. The Truth in the Fire. The ranger station felt smaller by the hour. Kira paced the cramped main room like a caged wolf, her boots echoing against the worn wooden floors. Every few minutes, she'd check the windows, hoping the storm had lessened. It hadn't. If anything, the blizzard seemed to be getting worse. Darius sat at the small table, methodically cleaning her weapons. He'd stripped down her pistol with the practiced ease of someone intimately familiar with firearms, and now he was examining each piece in the firelight. You take good care of your gear, he said without looking up. Military training? None of your business. She completed another circuit of the room, her wolf growing more agitated with each pass. I'm trying to make conversation. I'd rather you didn't. Darius looked up then, fixing her with those unsettling gray eyes. We're going to be stuck here for days. We can either talk like civilized people, or we can snarl at each other until one of us snaps. Which do you think ends better for both of us? Kira wanted to argue, but he had a point. Her wolf was already on edge from the forced proximity, from the scent of him filling every breath. If she let the tension build much more, one of them was going to do something they'd regret. She dropped into the chair across from him, making sure to keep the table between them.
Fine.
But I'm not answering questions about pack business. Fair enough. He reassembled her pistol with smooth, efficient movements. Though I have to ask, what did you think you were going to accomplish, hacking into my pack's financial records? So much for avoiding pack business. I told you. You were looking for something specific. Darius set her gun on the table between them, close enough that she could grab it if she was fast enough. The gesture wasn't lost on her. The way you searched through those files, you knew exactly what you were hunting for. So either you're the world's most efficient corporate spy, or someone gave you a very specific shopping list. Kira's jaw tightened. Why should I tell you anything? For all I know, you're the one behind it. Behind what? The genuine confusion in his voice made her pause. Either he was an exceptional liar, or he truly didn't know what she'd discovered. Which would mean, the weapons, she said quietly. The silver-laced ammunition. Enough to outfit a small army. Darius went very still. When he spoke, his voice was deadly calm. What weapons? Don't play dumb. Your pack placed an order for specialized ammunition 3 weeks ago. Military grade, silver core rounds designed specifically for killing werewolves. The kind of firepower you'd need if you were planning to wipe out an entire pack. That's impossible. But even as he said it, she could see the wheels turning behind his eyes. The confusion giving way to something that looked suspiciously like dread. I have the invoices. Purchase orders signed by someone with Silvermoon Pack authorization codes. The shipment was supposed to arrive. She stopped, calculating. Yesterday. Which means it's probably sitting in some warehouse right now, waiting to be distributed to your wolves. Darius was on his feet, so fast his chair toppled backward. Show me. I don't have them with me. They're in my Jeep, which is currently buried under God knows how much snow. Describe them. Every detail. There was something in his voice that made her wolf sit up and take notice. Not the tone of someone caught in a lie, but the urgency of someone who just realized they were in serious danger. The orders came through something called Moonrise Holdings. The authorization codes were. She frowned, trying to remember. MSP 7741 and MSP 7742. Darius cursed, a string of words that would have made her father blush. He began pacing, running his hands through his dark hair. Those codes were deactivated 6 months ago, he said. They belong to my uncle Victor. He was exiled from the pack after he challenged my authority and lost. Exiled to where? I don't know. That was the point of exile. Darius stopped pacing and fixed her with an intense stare. But if he's using old pack codes to purchase weapons, he's planning a coup, Kira finished. Take out your current leadership and seize control of the pack. Not just my pack. Darius's expression was grim. Those silver bullets you mentioned, they work just as well on Blackthorn wolves as Silvermoon ones. If Victor's planning something, he won't stop with just eliminating me. The implication hit her like a physical blow. He's going to start a war. Use the weapons to attack both packs, probably make it look like we're killing each other. And in the chaos, he sweeps in to pick up the pieces. Darius resumed his pacing, but now it was purposeful, strategic. It's actually brilliant. Eliminate 2 alpha bloodlines, claim he's the rightful heir to both territories, and any survivors will be too scattered and traumatized to resist. Kira felt sick. How many weapons are we talking about? Based on the invoices you described? Enough to arm 50, maybe 60 shooters. More than enough to decimate both our packs if they catch us by surprise. The room fell silent except for the howling wind outside. The fire popped and crackled, casting dancing shadows on the walls. Kira stared at the flames, trying to process what this meant. Her mission had been simple: find evidence of Silvermoon aggression and report back to her father. Instead, she'd uncovered a conspiracy that threatened everyone she'd ever cared about. My father doesn't know, she said quietly. He sent me here thinking you were the threat. And my pack council has no idea Victor is still operating in the area. Darius stopped pacing and looked at her. We have to warn them.
How?
The radio's dead, phones don't work, and we're trapped here for the next 3 days minimum. There has to be a way. A sound from outside cut him off. Not the wind this time, but something else. Something that made both their wolves go on high alert. The low, mournful howl of a wolf pack on the hunt. Darius moved to the window in 2 quick strides, peering through a gap in the curtains. Shit. What is it? Lights. Moving through the trees. He turned to her, his face grave. Someone's out there. In this storm. Kira joined him at the window, pressing close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. Through the swirling snow, she could just make out bobbing lights, flashlights or lanterns, moving in a coordinated pattern through the forest. Whoever they are, they're not looking for shelter, she murmured. They're searching for something. Or someone. Darius's voice was barely a whisper. The question is, did they follow your trail here or mine? Another howl echoed through the night, closer this time. It was answered by 2 more, then 3. The sounds formed a loose circle around the ranger station, and Kira realized with growing dread that they were being surrounded. Both, she said. They followed both of us. Darius moved away from the window, his movements quick and efficient. He grabbed her weapons from the table, checking the loads before handing her the pistol and knife. How many rounds do you have? He asked. 2 magazines, plus what's in the gun. She accepted the weapons, grateful to have them back. You. About the same. He pulled his own gun from a shoulder holster she hadn't noticed before. Not nearly enough if Victor brought his whole crew. Victor? Kira's blood chilled. You think that's who's out there? Who else would be crazy enough to track us through a blizzard? Darius moved to the back of the cabin, checking the windows and door. He must have been watching when I pulled you from your jeep. Followed us here. But why wait until now? Why not attack when we were unconscious or separated? Darius paused, and when he looked at her, his expression was troubled. Because he needed us both in the same place. Think about it. What's the one thing that would guarantee our packs would go to war? Understanding hit her like ice water in her veins. If we killed each other. Or if it looked like we did. Darius's smile was sharp and humorless. Find our bodies here tomorrow, evidence that we fought to the death, maybe some planted evidence suggesting betrayal or assassination. Both packs would be screaming for blood within hours. The lights outside were getting closer. Kira could hear voices now, muffled by the wind but definitely human. Or rather, werewolf. The words were indistinct, but the tone was unmistakable. They were coming for blood. The back door, Darius said quietly. Can we? The front window exploded inward in a shower of glass and snow. A silver canister rolled across the floor, hissing as it released a thick, acrid smoke. Kira's eyes began to water immediately, and her throat burned with each breath. Wolfsbane gas, Darius snarled, grabbing her arm. They want us alive but helpless. More windows shattered. More canisters. The small cabin filled with poisonous smoke that would weaken their wolves and slow their healing. Kira felt her strength already beginning to ebb, her enhanced senses dulling. Back door, she gasped, pulling her shirt up to cover her nose and mouth. They stumbled through the smoke toward the rear of the cabin. Darius reached the door first, yanked it open, and came face to face with the barrel of a shotgun. Hello, nephew. Victor Silvermoon smiled, his finger tightening on the trigger. Miss me? Chapter 3. Blood and Betrayal. Time slowed to a crawl. Kira saw Victor's finger tighten on the trigger, saw the cruel smile spread across his weathered face, saw Darius tense to throw himself sideways. The wolfsbane was making everything sluggish, her reflexes dulled, but her mind was crystal clear. She dove forward, slamming into Darius's side just as the shotgun boomed. The blast shredded the air where Darius's chest had been a heartbeat before. They hit the floor hard, rolling behind an overturned table as Victor cursed and pumped another shell into the chamber. Touching, Victor called out, his voice cutting through the chaos. The Blackthorn Princess, saving the Silvermoon Prince. If I didn't know better, I'd think you two were actually bonded. More figures appeared in the doorway behind him, 4 wolves in human form, all armed, all moving with the coordinated precision of a military unit. The wolfsbane was getting thicker, making Kira's eyes stream and her lungs burn. "We need to get out of here," Darius whispered, his lips close to her ear. Even through the poison fog, his scent was intoxicating, pine and leather, and something uniquely male that made her wolf whimper. "Where?" she gasped back. "They've got us surrounded." "The cellar. There's a storm drain that connects to the old mining tunnels." His gray eyes were fierce despite the wolfsbane's effects. "Can you make it?" Before she could answer, Victor's voice rang out again. "I know you can hear me, nephew. Why don't you come out and face this with some dignity? I promise to make it quick." "Like hell," Darius muttered. He pointed toward a trapdoor partially hidden under a throw rug near the fireplace. "On 3, 1. Gunfire erupted, splintering the table they were hiding behind. Kira could hear Victor's men spreading out, taking positions around the cabin. 2. A grenade rolled across the floor. Not explosive, but another gas canister. This one released something that smelled like rotting meat and made Kira's wolf recoil in terror. Fear pheromones, designed to trigger panic in shifted wolves. 3. They broke from cover together, sprinting low toward the trapdoor. Bullets whined past them, embedding in the wooden walls. Kira's legs felt like lead, the wolfsbane sapping her enhanced speed, but adrenaline carried her forward. Darius reached the trapdoor first, yanking it open to reveal a ladder descending into darkness. He dropped through without hesitation. Kira followed, her boots slipping on the rungs as more gunfire erupted above. The cellar was a cramped stone chamber that smelled of mold and decades of abandonment. Darius was already moving toward the far wall, where an iron grate covered what looked like a drainage pipe. "Help me with this," he said, gripping the bars. Kira grabbed the other side, and together they heaved. The grate was old and rusted, but it was also secured with newer bolts. Someone had reinforced it recently. Victor knew about this exit, Darius realized. He's planned for everything. Heavy footsteps thundered overhead. Victor's voice carried down through the floorboards. "Check the cellar." They went down, but there's nowhere to run. Kira examined the bolts holding the grate in place. They were silver-plated, which meant they'd burn to touch in shifted form, but in human form. She pulled out her knife. "The threads are stripped on this one," she whispered, working the blade into the bolt head. "If we can get leverage." The cellar door burst open. Boots on the ladder. They were out of time. Darius moved to shield her, gun drawn, but Kira could see the calculation in his eyes. 2 of them, poisoned and weakened, against Victor's entire crew. It wasn't a fight they could win. The first mercenary reached the bottom of the ladder, a tall man with ritual scars covering his arms. Not pack, Kira realized. Victor was using hired muscle, humans who didn't care about werewolf politics as long as the pay was good. Darius fired twice, center mass. The man dropped, but another was already coming down the ladder. Kira's knife finally found purchase on the stripped bolt. It turned, grudgingly, then faster. 1 down, 3 to go. "Whatever you're doing, do it faster," Darius said, putting 2 more rounds into the second mercenary. Almost got it. The second bolt came free. The third. Her fingers were bleeding from where the rough metal had cut her, but she could feel the grate starting to give. More voices from above. Victor was getting impatient. "Burn them out," she heard him order. "I want this place turned to ash with them in it." The smell of gasoline drifted down through the floorboards. Kira's blood chilled. If Victor torched the ranger station with them trapped in the cellar, the 4th bolt finally gave way. The grate swung open, revealing a narrow tunnel that disappeared into darkness. It was barely wide enough for one person to crawl through, and God only knew where it led, but it was their only chance. "You first," Darius said, but Kira was already shaking her head. "You're bigger. If you get stuck, we both die. I'll go first, make sure the path is clear." Before he could argue, she dove into the tunnel. The space was so narrow her shoulders brushed both walls. The air was stale and cold, thick with the smell of old water and mineral deposits. Behind her, she could hear Darius following, his larger frame scraping against the stone. They crawled in darkness for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Kira's hands were raw from the rough stone, and the wolfsbane still burning in her lungs made every breath a struggle. But gradually, the air began to improve, and she could feel a faint current that suggested an opening ahead. The tunnel widened slightly, enough that she could rise to her hands and knees. Then, finally, she saw light, not artificial light, but the pale gray glow of dawn filtering through snow. "There," she whispered back to Darius. "I can see the exit." They emerged from a culvert hidden in a grove of pine trees about a quarter-mile from the ranger station. The blizzard had finally started to ease, though snow was still falling steadily. In the distance, orange light flickered through the trees. Victor had made good on his threat. The ranger station was burning. "My jeep," Kira said, pointing through the trees. "If we can dig it out." "No time," Darius interrupted. He was looking back toward the fire, his expression grim. "Victor's men will be tracking us within minutes. They'll expect us to head for the vehicles. Then where?" A new sound cut through the morning air. The deep, resonant howl of an alpha calling his pack. But this wasn't Victor's voice, and it wasn't coming from the direction of the burning station. "That's my beta," Darius said, hope flickering in his eyes. "Marcus must have sent a search party when I didn't check in." A second howl answered the first, then a third. The Silvermoon pack was coming. But as they listened, another sound reached them. The distant rumble of engines. Vehicles approaching from the opposite direction. "My father," Kira realized. He sent backup too. The two packs were converging on the same location, both looking for their missing members. And with Victor's conspiracy still unknown to either side, "They'll think we killed each other," Darius said, voicing her thoughts. "When they find the burned station, our scents mix together, evidence of a fight. It'll be exactly what Victor wanted." Kira felt the weight of inevitability settling over her. "Even if we run now, even if we make it back to our respective packs, who's going to believe that we work together? That there's a bigger threat out there?" Darius was quiet for a long moment, watching the smoke rise from the burning station. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "There's something else," he said. "Something I haven't told you." "What?" He turned to face her, and in his eyes she saw pain, guilt, and something that might have been hope. "Victor didn't just challenge my leadership 6 months ago. He murdered my father to get to me." Kira's breath caught. "Darius." "He made it look like a hunting accident, but I knew. The whole pack knew. That's why he was exiled instead of executed. I couldn't prove it, and pack law requires evidence for a death sentence." His hands clenched into fists. "If Victor's willing to kill his own brother for power, what do you think he'll do to prevent an alliance between our packs?" The implication was clear. Victor had orchestrated this entire situation not just to start a war, but to ensure that the one thing that could stop him, a united front between Silvermoon and Blackthorn, would never happen. "The mate bond," Kira whispered. "He knows, doesn't he? About us. He'd have to be blind not to see it. The way we move together, protect each other. Victor's old school, traditional. He believes mates can sense each other from the first meeting." Darius stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his warmth even through the cold morning air. "Is he right?" Kira wanted to deny it. Every instinct she'd been raised with screamed that this was wrong, that Darius Silvermoon was her enemy, that admitting to the mate bond would betray everything her family stood for. But she could still smell his scent on her skin, could still feel the rightness of moving with him, fighting beside him. Her wolf had never been more certain of anything. "Yes," she said simply. The word hung in the air between them like a bridge, or a declaration of war. The sound of engines was getting closer now. Soon, both packs would be here, and they'd have to choose. Run separately and let their families destroy each other, or stand together and face whatever came next. Darius held out his hand. "Partners?" Kira looked at his outstretched palm, then at the smoke rising from their temporary sanctuary, then at the forest where two packs were about to collide in a storm of violence and misunderstanding. She took his hand. "Partners," she agreed, just as the first Silvermoon scouts broke through the treeline. The real battle was about to begin. Chapter 4. When Packs Collide. The first Silver Moon scout emerged from the tree-line like a ghost materializing from shadow. Tall, lean, with the kind of predatory grace that marked him as a born hunter. His eyes swept the area, taking in the smoke from the burning station, the disturbed snow where Kira and Darius had emerged from the tunnel, and finally settling on them with laser focus. "Alpha," the scout called, his voice carrying the respect and relief of a beta who'd found his missing leader. "We've been tracking your scent since midnight." Darius stepped forward, but he didn't release Kira's hand. She felt the slight tremor in his grip, not fear, but the weight of what they were about to attempt. "Report, Hayes," Darius commanded, slipping seamlessly into his alpha persona. 3 vehicles, 15 wolves in the search party. "We lost your trail at the road, but the smoke." Hayes stopped mid-sentence, his nostrils flaring as he caught Kira's scent. His expression shifted from relief to confusion to barely controlled aggression. "Alpha, why do you smell like blackthorn?" Before Darius could answer, the sound of engines grew louder. Through the trees on the opposite side of the clearing, headlights carved through the gray dawn light. The Blackthorn pack had arrived. "Because we've been together for the past 12 hours, Kira said, stepping forward to stand beside Darius. "And before you bare your teeth at me, Scout, you should know that your alpha saved my life." Hayes's hand moved instinctively toward the knife at his belt, but Darius's sharp whistle stopped him cold. "Stand down," Darius ordered. "We have bigger problems than pack rivalry." The first Blackthorn vehicle broke through the tree-line, a massive black SUV that screamed alpha presence. The doors opened, and Kira's heart clenched as her father stepped out, followed by 6 of his best warriors. Alpha Marcus Blackthorn was exactly what Central Casting would order for a werewolf patriarch, silver-haired, broad-shouldered, with eyes like winter storms and the kind of presence that made lesser predators think twice. Those storm-gray eyes, so much like Darius's, she realized with a start, fixed on his daughter with a mixture of relief and fury. "Kira." His voice carried across the clearing like a whip crack. "Step away from the Silver Moon Alpha. Now." More Silver Moon wolves emerged from the forest. More Blackthorn warriors climbed out of their vehicles. Within seconds, 15 armed werewolves faced off across 50 yards of snow-covered ground, with Kira and Darius standing directly in the middle. "This is about to go very badly," Darius murmured under his breath. "Dad, wait." Kira called out, but her father was already striding forward, his beta flanking him on both sides. "What did they do to you?" Marcus demanded, his gaze sweeping over her torn clothes, her cut hands, the way she stood close enough to Darius that their shoulders touched. "Did they hurt you?" "Nobody hurt me. We need to talk, all of us. There's something you need to know about." "The only thing I need to know," Marcus interrupted, "is why my daughter is standing hand in hand with the enemy." Because that's exactly what they were doing, Kira realized. At some point during the confrontation, their fingers had intertwined again, and neither had let go. To the watching packs, it must look like either coercion or betrayal. "She's not my enemy," Darius said quietly, but his voice carried in the stillness. "Not anymore." The reaction was immediate. Growls erupted from both sides. Hands moved to weapons. The scent of aggression and adrenaline filled the air so thickly that Kira's wolf wanted to bare her throat in submission. "You have 10 seconds to release my daughter," Marcus said, his voice dropping to the dangerous register that preceded violence, "before I remind you why the Blackthorn pack doesn't negotiate with kidnappers." 10 seconds to step away from the Blackthorn princess, Hayes echoed from the Silver Moon side. "Before we decide you've been compromised, Alpha." Kira felt the situation spiraling beyond control. In moments, this would become a bloodbath that would destroy any chance of exposing Victor's conspiracy. Both packs were seconds away from war, and she and Darius were about to become the first casualties. Unless... "I claim right of testimony," she shouted, the formal words cutting through the tension like a blade. The growling stopped. Every eye turned to her. Right of testimony was an ancient pack law, rarely invoked, that allowed any wolf to demand a hearing before the Alpha Council. It was also one of the few laws that superseded even pack rivalry, Tradition demanded that all wolves present bear witness. Kira, no, her father warned. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing. She squeezed Darius's hand once, then stepped forward to address both groups. I invoke the right of testimony under the old laws. I have information that affects the safety of both packs, and I demand to be heard. A murmur ran through the gathered wolves. Hayes looked to Darius for guidance, while Marcus's beta whispered urgently in his ear. The right is recognized, Darius said formally. Then, to his own pack, form the circle. Absolutely not, Marcus snapped. I'm not participating in some silver moon ritual. It's not a silver moon ritual, Dad. It's older than both our packs. Kira met her father's eyes, putting every ounce of conviction she possessed into her voice. You taught me the old laws yourself. Are you going to dishonor them now because you don't like where we're standing? For a long moment, father and daughter stared at each other across the clearing. Then Marcus cursed under his breath and gestured to his wolves. Form the circle, he ordered reluctantly. But weapons stay ready. The two packs moved with the fluid precision of predators, forming a loose circle around Kira and Darius. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. They were literally surrounded by their supposed enemies, with nowhere to run and no backup coming. Speak, Marcus commanded. Kira took a deep breath. Everything depended on the next few minutes. If she could make them understand, if she could convince them that the real threat came from within. Victor Silvermoon is alive, she began. And he's planning to destroy both our packs. The reaction was immediate. Several Silvermoon wolves started forward, only to be stopped by Darius's raised hand. Victor was exiled. Hayes protested. He's forbidden from pack territory. Exile doesn't mean death, Kira replied. And it doesn't mean he's given up on his ambitions. She turned to address both groups. 3 weeks ago, someone using old Silvermoon authorization codes placed an order for military-grade silver ammunition. Enough to arm 60 shooters. That's impossible, Marcus said, but she could see the calculation in his eyes. Silver rounds are restricted. Not if you know the right black market dealers. Not if you have enough money. Kira pulled the crumpled invoices from her jacket pocket. She grabbed them from her jeep during their escape, though she hadn't mentioned it to Darius. I have the paperwork. Purchase orders, shipping manifests, everything. She held up the documents, and several wolves moved closer to examine them. Marcus snatched them from her hands, his expression growing darker as he read. These codes, he said slowly. MSP 7741 and MSP 7742. Belong to my uncle, Darius confirmed. They were deactivated when he was exiled 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Marcus looked up from the papers, his storm-gray eyes sharp with intelligence. Right around the time your father died in that hunting accident. It wasn't an accident. Darius's voice was flat, emotionless. Victor killed him. I couldn't prove it, but I knew. And now he's back, Kira continued, with enough firepower to wipe out both our packs. The plan is simple. Attack both sides, make it look like we're killing each other, then sweep in to claim the territory when the dust settles. Even if that's true, Hayes interjected, why should we believe anything a Blackthorn tells us? How do we know this isn't some elaborate deception? It was a fair question, and one Kira had been dreading. How could she explain the past 12 hours without revealing the mate bond? How could she make them understand that she and Darius had worked together, trusted each other, saved each other's lives? Because, Darius said quietly, an hour ago, Victor Silvermoon tried to kill us both. He told them about the attack on the ranger station, about the wolfsbane gas and the mercenaries, about Victor's plan to use their deaths as the spark for a larger war. As he spoke, Kira watched the faces around the circle, seeing skepticism give way to concern, then to anger. The ranger station is still burning, she added when Darius finished. You can see the smoke from here. If you send scouts to investigate, you'll find evidence of the attack. Bullet holes, gas canisters, Victor's scent mixed with mercenary sweat. This could all be an elaborate setup, Marcus said, but his tone had lost its edge. A way to make us lower our guard. To what end? Darius challenged. If I wanted to attack your pack, why would I need an elaborate conspiracy? Why not just attack? Because you couldn't win a straight fight, Hayes said hotly. Neither could you, one of the Blackthorn warriors shot back. Enough. Kira's voice cracked like a whip. This is exactly what Victor wants. Both packs so focused on each other that we miss the real threat. While we're arguing about who could beat whom in a fight, he's out there with enough silver bullets to kill us all. The circle fell silent. In the distance, the smoke from the ranger station continued to rise, a black column against the gray sky. There's something else, Darius said finally. Something that changes everything. Kira's heart clenched.
No.
Not here. Not like this. But Darius was already speaking, his voice carrying the formal cadence of pack law. I claim Kira Blackthorn as my mate under the old bonds. She has accepted my protection, and I have accepted hers. By the laws that govern all wolves, our packs are now allied by blood and honor. The explosion of voices was immediate. Shouts of outrage, disbelief, and in some cases, what sounded like joy. Marcus's face went through several shades of red before settling on a color that suggested he was considering murder. You did what? He roared. But it was Hayes who spoke the words that chilled Kira's blood. An unconsummated mate bond can be broken by the death of either party. The implication hung in the air like a sword. Several wolves from both sides were already moving, hands reaching for weapons, and Kira realized that Darius's attempt to unite the packs might have just signed both their death warrants. The bond cannot be broken, Darius said steadily, but Kira could hear the uncertainty beneath his words. It's already formed. Has it? Marcus's voice was deadly quiet. Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my daughter is about to become a widow before she's even a wife. Chapter 5. The Mating Laws. The forest had gone dead silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath as Marcus Blackthorn's words echoed through the clearing. 20 pairs of predatory eyes watched Kira and Darius, calculating, measuring, waiting for weakness. Kira felt her wolf coil like a spring, ready to fight or flee. But there was nowhere to run, and fighting would only prove their enemies right. The bond is consummated, she said clearly, her voice carrying to every wolf in the circle. It was a lie. A desperate, dangerous lie that could save their lives or damn them both. But it was also their only chance. Liar. The voice came from behind Marcus, Elena Blackthorn, Kira's cousin, and the pack's lead enforcer. She stepped forward with the fluid grace of a born killer, her nostrils flaring. You still smell like a virgin little cousin. Mate bond or not, you haven't shared his bed. Heat flooded Kira's cheeks, but she forced herself to stand straighter. The bond doesn't require. Oh, but it does. Elena's smile was sharp as broken glass. Ancient law is very specific about mate bonds. Physical union within 24 hours, or the bond can be severed by combat trial. Combat trial? Darius's voice was carefully controlled, but Kira could feel the tension radiating from him. Hayes answered from the Silva Moon side, his expression grim. Trial by combat between the claimed mate and a challenger of the family's choosing. If the mate dies, the bond dies with them. And since dear Kira is still untouched, Elena continued, the bond is incomplete. Which means any unmated male from either pack can issue challenge. Marcus stepped forward, his alpha presence rolling over the circle like a wave. I invoke the right of challenge for my daughter's honor. Dad, no. Kira moved to put herself between Marcus and Darius, but her father's beta caught her arm. This ends now, Marcus continued, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. My daughter has been compromised, manipulated, possibly even coerced by enemy magic. The mate bond claim is false, and I will see it broken. Magic. Darius's laugh was harsh. You're going to blame magic for your daughter's choices? I'm going to blame you for taking advantage of a traumatic situation, Marcus snarled. Stockholm Syndrome wrapped up in wolf instincts and called destiny. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Kira saw doubt flicker in several faces around the circle, doubt about her judgment, her mental state, her ability to make decisions for herself. It was exactly the kind of paternalistic bullshit she'd been fighting her entire life. Enough. Her voice cut through the rising tension like a blade. I'm not a child, and I'm not compromised. I know exactly what I'm doing. Do you? Marcus turned his storm-gray eyes on her, and for a moment, she saw genuine pain beneath the anger. 24 hours ago, you would have put a silver bullet in Darius Silvermoon without hesitation. Now you're claiming he's your destined mate? You don't see how that looks. I see how it looks, Kira admitted. I also know what I feel. What we both feel. She turned to address the full circle, putting every ounce of conviction she possessed into her words. The mate bond isn't something you choose. It's something that chooses you. And it chose us whether our packs like it or not. Pretty words, Elena said. But words don't change the law. Unconsummated bond, 24-hour limit, trial by combat. Those are the rules. Then we'll consummate it, Darius said quietly. The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. Kira felt her heart stutter, her wolf surge with sudden, fierce joy. Around the circle, expressions ranged from shock to outrage to something that might have been amusement. Here? Hayes asked incredulously.
Now.
The law doesn't specify location, Darius replied. Only timing. You can't be serious, Marcus breathed. But Kira was already turning to face Darius, her hands reaching for his jacket. Deadly serious. Because she could see what he was doing. The insane, brilliant gamble he was making. If they made it here, now, in front of both packs, there would be no question about the validity of the bond. No challenges, no trials by combat, no legal loopholes for their enemies to exploit. It would also be the most public, most witnessed mating in werewolf history. Kira, stop. Her father's voice cracked like a whip. You don't have to do this. I can protect you. From what? From my own choices. She slipped Darius's jacket off his shoulders, her fingers steady despite the magnitude of what they were attempting. I'm not your little girl anymore, Dad. I'm a grown woman, and this is my decision. The ground is frozen. One of the Silvermoon wolves pointed out practically. And there's still a blizzard. Shift forms, Elena said with malicious amusement. Wolves mate in the snow all the time.
No.
Darius's voice was firm. We do this as humans. Conscious choice, not animal instinct. He was already pulling his shirt over his head, revealing the kind of muscled chest that belonged on magazine covers. Scars marked his skin. Old wounds from training, newer ones from recent battles. Kira's mouth went dry, but she forced herself to focus. This wasn't about desire, though God knew she felt it. This was about survival. About proving that their bond was real, unbreakable, worth the chaos it was causing. She reached for the hem of her own shirt, then hesitated. Around the circle, 20 pairs of eyes watched her every move. Pack members she'd known since childhood. Enemies who would judge every gasp, every moan, every moment of vulnerability. I can't, she whispered. You can. Darius stepped closer, close enough that his body heat warmed her skin. Look at me. Only me. She raised her eyes to his, and the rest of the world seemed to fade. Gray eyes like storm clouds, dark with desire and something deeper. Understanding. Acceptance.
Love.
Only you, she agreed, and pulled her shirt over her head. The cold hit her bare skin like a slap, but Darius's hands were warm as they cupped her face. His thumb traced her cheekbone, gentle despite the calluses. Are you sure? He asked, so quietly that only she could hear. Once we do this, there's no going back. No annulment, no do-overs. You'll be bound to me until one of us dies. I know. She placed her hands over his, feeling the steady pulse in his wrists. Are you sure? I come with a lot of baggage. An overprotective father, a pack that's going to hate you, political complications that could last decades. Worth it, he said simply. You're worth all of it. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and nothing like she'd expected from the fearsome Silvermoon alpha. His lips were warm against hers, gentle, asking permission rather than demanding submission. She kissed him back, pouring all her certainty, all her hope, all her reckless courage into the contact. Around them, she could hear murmurs, gasps, at least one creative curse from what sounded like haze. When they broke apart, Darius rested his forehead against hers. "The rest of it can wait," he murmured, "until we're somewhere warm and private." "The rest of what?" she asked, confused. "The mating bite." His smile was tender and predatory all at once. "The bond doesn't require full consummation in front of an audience. Just proof of intent and the beginning of the physical connection." Relief flooded through her. She'd been prepared to go through with it. All of it. But the thought of their first time being a spectacle for two hostile packs had made her stomach churn.
"But people will know," she said.
"Won't they?" "That we haven't. They'll smell the arousal, the beginning of the bond. It'll be enough to satisfy the law." Darius's hands moved to her back, pulling her closer. "Unless you want to give them a full show." "Definitely not," she said firmly, then louder. "The intent is established. The bond is begun. Challenge it if you dare." Silence stretched across the clearing. Then Marcus spoke, his voice heavy with resignation and something that might have been grief. "The bond is witnessed," he said formally. "Recognized by the Blackthorn Pack." "Witnessed and recognized by Silvermoon," Darius added. It should have been a moment of triumph. Instead, Kira felt oddly hollow as she pulled her shirt back on. They'd won the legal battle, secured their right to be together. But at what cost? Her father looked like he'd aged 10 years in the past hour. Several pack members on both sides were openly glaring at them. "So what now?" Hayes asked. "We all pretend that 30 generations of pack rivalry just disappeared because our alpha found his mate?" "We deal with Victor," Darius said firmly. "Together. Because divided, he'll destroy us all." "And after Victor?" Elena's voice was sharp with challenge. "What happens to pack territories? Hunting rights? The resource agreements that have kept us separated for decades?" "We figure out," Kira said. "Like adults. Like allies." "Easy to say when you're thinking with your hormones instead of your brain," one of the Silver Moon Wolves muttered. The comment sparked fresh tension around the circle. Hands moved toward weapons again, and Kira could feel the fragile piece beginning to crack. Then a new sound cut through the forest, the distant rumble of engines, but different from before.
Heavier.
Multiple vehicles moving fast. "More Blackthorn?" Hayes asked. Marcus shook his head. "All my people are here." Silvermoon. Same. Darius and Kira exchanged glances. There was only one other group that would be heading toward their location with that kind of speed and purpose. "Victor," Kira breathed. The first explosion lit up the forest like a miniature sun, sending snow cascading from the trees and making every wolf in the circle drop into defensive crouches. "Incoming," someone shouted. The second explosion was closer. Much closer. And through the smoke and chaos, Kira could hear Victor Silvermoon's voice, amplified by some kind of speaker system. "Attention, children. Uncle Victor has some new toys to show you. I do hope you'll all die with dignity." Chapter 6. War Comes Home. The third explosion shattered the morning calm, close enough that Kira felt the shockwave in her bones. Trees splintered and crashed around the clearing as debris rained down like deadly hail. Through the chaos, she could hear the roar of heavy engines, not just vehicles, but something bigger. Military grade. "Scatter formation," Marcus bellowed, his alpha voice cutting through the confusion. "Find cover and establish defensive positions." But there was nowhere to run. The explosions had been precisely placed, blocking the main escape routes and herding both packs into the center of the clearing like sheep for slaughter. "He's using mortar rounds," one of the Silver Moon warriors called out, diving behind a fallen log. "Military surplus, probably 60 millimeters. "How many?" Darius demanded, his own alpha instincts taking over as he pulled Kira behind the relative shelter of a massive pine. "Hard to tell, but..." Another explosion cut off the answer, this one so close that Kira's ears rang and her vision blurred. When the smoke cleared, She could see vehicles emerging from the forest, not the trucks and SUVs their packs used, but actual armored personnel carriers. 3 of them, moving in perfect formation. Where the hell did he get APCs? Hayes shouted over the noise. Same place he got the silver bullets, Kira replied grimly. Money talks, and Victor's been planning this for months. The vehicles stopped at the edge of the clearing, their engines idling like mechanical predators. Hatches opened, and armed figures began pouring out. Not werewolves, Kira realized, but humans. Mercenaries in full tactical gear, carrying weapons that gleamed with silver plating. 30, maybe 40 shooters, Marcus counted, his experienced eye assessing the threat. All human, all armed with anti-werewolf ordnance. Smart, Darius said reluctantly. Humans won't be affected by alpha commands or pack hierarchy. They'll just follow orders and shoot anything that moves. Victor's voice boomed across the clearing again, the sound system making his words echo off the trees. I must say, this is better than I hoped. Both pack leaders, both heirs, all gathered in one convenient location. It's almost like Christmas morning. A figure appeared on top of the center APC, Victor Silvermoon himself, looking every inch the conquering general. He was older than Darius, with silver streaking his dark hair and the kind of weathered face that spoke of hard decisions and harder consequences. But his eyes, burned with the fanatic gleam of someone who'd convinced himself that any atrocity was justified. Hello, nephew, Victor called out, his voice carrying easily across the distance. I see you've been making friends with the neighbors. How progressive of you. Victor. Darius stepped out from behind their makeshift cover, ignoring Kira's attempt to pull him back. This is between us. Let the others go. Victor's laugh was genuinely amused. Oh, my boy, you still don't understand, do you?
This was never about you.
You were just, what's the phrase, collateral damage. He gestured toward the assembled mercenaries, and Kira saw them raising their weapons. Silver-jacketed rounds that would punch through werewolf hide like paper, delivering poison directly into their bloodstream. You see, Victor continued conversationally, I realized something during my months in exile. The problem with our kind isn't that we fight each other, it's that we don't fight efficiently. All these little territorial disputes, these petty power struggles, they're symptoms of a larger disease. Which is? Marcus demanded. Democracy. Victor spat the word like a curse. Pack councils.
Debates. Votes.
All of it designed to make us weak, indecisive, vulnerable to human expansion. His eyes gleamed with zealous fervor. What we need is strong leadership. A single alpha to unite all the packs under one banner. Your banner, Kira said flatly. Of course my banner. I'm the only one with the vision to see what we could become. Victor spread his arms wide, encompassing the armed mercenaries, the smoking forest, the cowering werewolves. No more territorial disputes. No more resource wars. One pack, one leader, one destiny. One megalomaniac with a god complex, Hayes muttered. Victor's hearing was apparently excellent. Mock me if you like, Beta, but I'm offering you all a choice. Kneel now, swear fealty to the new order, and you'll have honored positions in my pack. Refuse. He snapped his fingers. 20 rifle barrels swung toward the werewolves' positions. Refuse, and you'll serve as an example to the next pack I visit. The silence stretched taut as a wire. Kira could feel the weight of 40 pairs of eyes, 20 human and 20 werewolf, all waiting to see who would break first. Counteroffer, Darius said calmly. You and me one-on-one. Winner takes all. How delightfully old-fashioned. Victor's smile was sharp as broken glass. But I'm afraid I've moved beyond such primitive solutions. This isn't about personal honor anymore, nephew. It's about evolution. He raised his hand, clearly preparing to give the order to fire. Wait. Kira stepped out from cover, her hands raised in apparent surrender. You're right about one thing. The packs need to unite. But you're wrong about the method. Victor's eyebrows rose. Oh, please enlighten me. You're trying to build unity through fear and violence. But there's another way. She gestured toward Darius, who was looking at her like she'd lost her mind. Marriage alliance. Mate bonds between pack leaders. Unity through partnership, not conquest. How beautifully naive. Victor's voice dripped with condescension. And how exactly do you propose to enforce such alliances? What happens when the next generation decides they don't want to honor their parents' romantic choices? The same thing that happens in any family, Kira replied. You make it work because the alternative is worse. She was walking forward now, slowly, keeping her hands visible. Around the clearing, she could feel both packs watching her with a mixture of admiration and horror. Her father's face had gone white, but he wasn't trying to stop her. He knew what she was doing. You know, I think I like you, Victor said. Such spirit. Such conviction. It's almost a shame I'm going to have to kill you. Before you do, Kira said, now close enough to see the madness dancing in Victor's eyes, I have a question. Only one. How did you know we'd all be here? How did you know both packs would converge on this exact location at this exact time? Victor's smile faltered slightly. Lucky timing. I don't think so. Kira was within 30 feet of the APC now, close enough to smell the gun oil and human sweat from the mercenaries. I think you've been monitoring our communications. Probably for months. Communications can be hacked, Victor said carefully. Pack bonds can't. Kira's smile was sharp as her father's. Which is how I know you have a spy in one of our packs. Someone close enough to know when search parties were dispatched, where they were going, what they were looking for. The accusation hung in the air like a bomb waiting to explode. Around the clearing, she could see pack members eyeing each other with sudden suspicion. Fascinating theory, Victor said, but hardly relevant to your current situation. Oh, but it is. Kira had stopped walking, but she was still talking, still buying time. Because your spy is about to become very relevant. She raised her voice, addressing both packs. Victor needed someone on the inside to make this work. Someone who could feed him information, guide events, make sure everything went according to plan. The question is, who? Enough games, Victor snarled. Kill them. Kill them all. But before the mercenaries could open fire, a new voice cut across the clearing. I wouldn't do that if I were you. Elena Blackthorn stepped out from behind a tree, but she wasn't alone. 6 more figures emerged from concealment around the clearing's perimeter, werewolves in tactical gear, moving with military precision. Back up. Victor asked, sounding mildly interested rather than concerned. Better, Elena replied. Federal agents. Fish and Wildlife Service, Supernatural Crimes Division. She held up a badge, and Kira felt her world tilt sideways. Elena? Federal agent?
Since when?
Victor Silvermoon, Elena continued formally. You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit genocide, illegal weapons trafficking, and violation of the Supernatural Species Protection Act. You've got to be kidding me, Hayes muttered. But Victor was laughing, a sound like breaking glass. Oh, this is rich. This is absolutely perfect. He turned to address his mercenaries. Gentlemen, it appears we have federal agents in addition. The lead mercenary, a scarred man with dead eyes, shrugged. Bodies are bodies. Payment's the same. Excellent. Victor's hand moved toward what looked like a detonator. Then let's finish this. Victor, no. Darius lunged forward, but he was too far away. Victor's finger closed on the trigger. The forest erupted in fire and thunder as hidden explosive charges detonated around the clearing's perimeter. Trees crashed down, blocking escape routes and filling the air with deadly splinters. Through the chaos, Kira could hear gunfire erupting as the mercenaries opened up with everything they had. She hit the ground rolling, came up behind a fallen log, and found herself face to face with one of Elena's federal agents. Up close, she could see the silver threading in his tactical vest, the specialized ammunition in his weapon, the absolute lack of mercy in his eyes. Elena, she screamed over the gunfire. Your backup's shooting at us. But when she looked toward where her cousin had been standing, Elena was gone. Vanished like smoke. And in the middle of the clearing, Victor Silvermoon stood on his armored vehicle like a king surveying his conquered domain, watching with evident satisfaction as two werewolf packs fought for their lives against an enemy that seemed to be everywhere at once. "Welcome to the New World Order," he called out over the sound of automatic weapons fire. "I do hope you enjoy your stay." Chapter 7. Blood and Silver. Bullets whined through the air like angry wasps, chewing bark from trees and sending snow exploding in deadly fountains. Kira pressed herself against the fallen log, her heart hammering as silver-jacketed rounds punched through the wood inches from her head. Status report. Marcus's alpha voice cut through the chaos, somehow audible over the gunfire. 3 down on our side. Hayes called back from somewhere to her left. Thompson took Silver in the shoulder, Miller's unconscious, and Rodriguez. His voice cracked. Rodriguez isn't getting up.
Dead.
Rodriguez was dead. The first casualty of Victor's war, but definitely not the last. Silvermoon casualties? Darius's voice, tight with pain. 2 wounded, 1 critical, came the response. We need to shift and charge Alpha. This defensive position is suicide. Negative. Darius snapped. They're using silver rounds. Shifting just makes us bigger targets. He was right, and Kira hated him for it. Every instinct screamed at her to let her wolf loose, to trust in fang and claw rather than hiding behind logs like prey animals. But silver bullets would tear through wolf hide like tissue paper, and their healing factor meant nothing if the poison reached their bloodstream. A grenade landed 10 feet away, hissing as it released another cloud of wolfsbane gas. Kira held her breath and squinted through the acrid smoke, trying to get a count of their attackers. Bad news. Victor's mercenaries had spread out in a classic kill-box formation, with overlapping fields of fire that covered every approach to their position. Worse news, more vehicles were arriving, disgorging fresh troops with heavy weapons. Worse news, she still couldn't see Elena anywhere. Movement 2 o'clock, someone screamed. Kira spun, bringing her pistol up, and found herself aiming at a figure in tactical gear emerging from the smoke. For a split second, she hesitated, friend or foe, and that hesitation almost cost her life. The mercenary's rifle swung toward her, muzzle flash strobing in the gray dawn light. Kira threw herself sideways, feeling the wind of the bullet's passage ruffle her hair, and put 3 rounds center mass into her attacker's chest. The man dropped like a stone, but his gear absorbed most of the impact. Body armor. Of course they had body armor. Headshots, she called out to anyone listening. Body armor's too thick. Another mercenary appeared through the smoke, this one smart enough to use cover. Kira ducked as his burst chewed up the log she was hiding behind, sending splinters flying like shrapnel. Then Darius was there, moving with inhuman speed despite his human form. He hit the mercenary low and hard, driving him backward into a tree with enough force to crack vertebrae. The man's rifle went flying, and Darius followed up with a brutal elbow strike that turned the mercenary's helmet into scrap metal. Thanks, Kira gasped, but Darius was already moving, flowing from target to target like a force of nature. She'd known he was dangerous in theory, but seeing him in action was something else entirely. Alpha strength and reflexes, combined with what looked like serious military training, made him devastating even without shifting. 2 more mercenaries went down before they could bring their weapons to bear. But there were too many of them. For every enemy they dropped, 2 more seemed to take his place. We need to break out of this kill box. Marcus's voice, hoarse from shouting orders. If we stay pinned down, they'll pick us off one by one. Break out how? Hayes demanded. They've got every escape route covered. The APCs, Kira realized. We take one of the armored vehicles, use it for mobile cover. Those things are locked down tight, one of the Silvermoon warriors protested. And probably booby-trapped. Then we don't try to steal one, Kira said, the plan crystallizing in her mind. We destroy it, create chaos, confusion, maybe take out some of their heavy weapons in the process. Darius appeared beside her, breathing hard but uninjured. With what? We don't exactly have anti-tank weapons. Kira smiled grimly and pulled something from her jacket pocket, a small device she grabbed from her jeep along with the financial documents. Thermite charge. I keep it for destroying hard drives when I need to cover my tracks. That's disturbingly well prepared, Darius said. I'm my father's daughter. She checked the charges timer. This should be enough to disable an engine block, maybe set off their ammunition if we're lucky. If we're unlucky, it just pisses them off, Hayes pointed out. Got a better idea? Silence, broken only by the ongoing gunfire. Right, Kira said. I'll work my way around to the center, APC. We'll work our way around, Darius corrected. You're not doing this alone. It's a one-person job. It's a suicide mission, Marcus interrupted, having overheard their exchange. And I forbid it. You forbid. Kira started to snap back, then caught herself. This wasn't the time for family arguments. Dad, we're all going to die if we stay here. At least this way, some of us might survive. Before Marcus could respond, a new sound cut through the battlefield, the distinctive whine of an incoming mortar round. Everyone in the clearing dove for cover as the shell impacted 20 yards away, sending up a geyser of earth and shattered trees. They're adjusting fire, one of the former military wolves reported grimly. Next one's going to be right on top of us. That decided it. Kira armed the thermite charge and started moving, using the smoke and confusion to mask her approach. Behind her, she could hear Darius following despite her protests. The center APC loomed through the haze like a mechanical monster. Up close, she could see Victor still standing on top, speaking into a radio headset, coordinating the attack, probably calling in more troops. She'd have one chance. Get close enough to plant the charge, activate the timer, and get clear before. Well, if it isn't the happy couple. Kira spun to find Elena emerging from behind the APC, but this wasn't the cousin she'd grown up with. This Elena moved with predatory grace, her eyes cold as winter ice, and the weapon in her hands was aimed directly at Kira's chest. Elena, Kira breathed. Thank God. I thought you were. Dead? Captured? Turned. Elena's smile was sharp as broken glass. Oh, I've definitely been turned. Just not in the way you're thinking. The truth hit Kira like a physical blow. You're Victor's spy. Spy is such an ugly word. I prefer strategic asset. I've been feeding information to Uncle Victor for months, making sure he stayed one step ahead of both Pac's security measures. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Because your father is weak, Elena said matter-of-factly. Because the old ways are dying, and we need strong leadership to survive what's coming. Because Victor promised me a place in his new order. Darius had gone very still beside Kira, his body coiled like a spring. What's coming? War, Elena said simply. Real war, not these territorial skirmishes we've been playing at. The humans are getting suspicious, asking questions, forming task forces. How long do you think it'll be before they decide we're too dangerous to coexist with? So, you decided to prove them right? Kira demanded. I decided to make sure we're ready when the time comes. Victor understands that survival requires sacrifice. Your father doesn't. Above them, Victor's voice boomed through his speaker system. Attention, children. I'm afraid playtime is over. You have 30 seconds to surrender, or I start using the heavy ordnance. Heavy ordnance. Kira's blood chilled as she realized what that meant. The mortars were just a warm-up, Elena confirmed, reading her expression. Victor brought rocket launchers. Military-grade, armor-piercing. Enough firepower to level this entire forest. You'll kill your own people, Darius pointed out. Acceptable losses. Elena's voice was ice-cold. The weak die so the strong can survive. It's the way of nature. It's the way of monsters, Kira snarled. Elena's finger tightened on her trigger. Maybe. But monsters tend to win wars. The gunshot was impossibly loud in the confined space between the APCs. Kira flinched, expecting the burn of silver in her chest, the taste of blood in her mouth. Instead, Elena staggered backward, red blooming across her tactical vest. She looked down at the wound with something like surprise, then up at the figure emerging from the smoke behind her. Marcus Blackthorne lowered his smoking pistol, his face carved from stone. My brother's daughter, he said quietly. My own blood. Elena's legs gave out. She collapsed against the APC's treads, her weapon clattering away across the frozen ground. Uncle Marcus. Why? The single word held a lifetime of grief. Because. Elena coughed, blood speckling her lips.
Because you taught me to put the pack first.
Always the pack first. I chose a different pack. She died with a smile on her face, and Kira felt something break inside her chest. Family. Her own cousin, her childhood playmate, her father's brother's daughter. Dead by her father's hand. Dad.
She started to say.
Later, Marcus said curtly. Right now, we have bigger problems. Victor's voice crackled through the speaker system again. I see my little spy has been discovered. How disappointing. I suppose I'll have to handle this the old-fashioned way. The first rocket streaked through the air like a falling star, impacting 100 yards away, but close enough to shake the ground beneath their feet. Trees exploded into splinters, and the shockwave knocked all three of them flat. Correction, Marcus gasped, struggling to his feet. We have much bigger problems. Kira looked at the thermite charge in her hands, then at the APC's engine compartment, then at the chaos erupting around them as Victor's forces prepared for their final assault. One chance. One desperate, suicidal chance to turn the tide. She activated the charge and dove for the engine compartment, praying that 10 seconds would be enough to save the people she loved. The explosion, when it came, lit up the world like a newborn sun. Chapter 8. Phoenix from Ashes. The APC's fuel tank went up like the 4th of July, sending a pillar of fire and black smoke climbing toward the gray sky. Shrapnel whistled through the air, and the concussion knocked Victor from his perch atop the vehicle. He hit the ground hard, rolling away from the flames with reflexes that spoke of serious combat training. But the explosion did more than just inconvenience Victor. It created exactly the chaos Kira had hoped for. The mercenaries scattered, some diving for cover, others trying to regroup around the remaining vehicles. In the confusion, several werewolves managed to break from the kill box and establish new defensive positions.
Now,
Marcus roared. While they're disorganized, what followed was 3 minutes of the most vicious close-quarters combat Kira had ever witnessed. Werewolves might be weakened by wolfsbane and vulnerable to silver, but they were still apex predators with superhuman strength and reflexes. When they stopped trying to fight like humans and started using their natural advantages, the tide of battle shifted dramatically. Hayes moved like liquid death, his knife work turning 3 mercenaries into statistics before they could bring their rifles to bear. 2 Blackthorn warriors flanked an enemy machine gun position, coming in from blind spots with a kind of coordination that spoke of years training together. And Darius. Darius fought like a force of nature. Kira watched him tear through Victor's forces with an efficiency that was both beautiful and terrifying. This was what an alpha looked like when everything he cared about was threatened. But the mercenaries were professionals, and they adapted quickly. Silver bullets started finding their targets again. The wolfsbane gas canisters came out in larger numbers. And Victor, climbing to his feet with murder in his eyes, began barking orders that restored order to the chaos. Enough. His voice carried the crack of absolute authority. Burn them out. All of them. The remaining APCs open up with flamethrowers. Liquid fire arced across the clearing, turning snow to steam and trees to torches. The acrid smell of burning sap and superheated metal filled the air, and Kira felt her wolf cower at the sight of so much fire in such a confined space. Fall back, someone screamed. Fall back to the ridge.
But there was nowhere to fall back to.
The explosions had blocked most of the escape routes, and those that remained were covered by enemy fire. They were trapped in a shrinking circle of death, with flames on one side and silver bullets on the other. This is it, Hayes said grimly, reloading his last magazine. Been an honor serving with all of you. It's not over yet, Darius said, but even he sounded like he was trying to convince himself. That's when Kira heard it, a sound that made her heart leap with desperate hope. The deep, resonant howl of wolves approaching at speed. Not just 1 or 2, but a whole pack. Reinforcements? Marcus asked, hope flickering in his voice. The howl came again, closer now, and this time Kira could make out the individual voices. Blackthorn wolves, definitely, but more than her father had brought. A lot more. My beta, Marcus breathed. I sent word before we left. If we didn't check in, you called in the entire pack. Darius demanded. Standard protocol. Missing alpha, possible enemy contact. We don't take chances. Victor had heard the howls too. His expression shifted from triumph to calculation to something that might have been concern. How many? He barked into his radio. The answer came crackling back, and even across the clearing, Kira could hear the worry in the spotter's voice. At least 30 contacts, moving fast. ETA 2 minutes. 30 Blackthorn wolves against Victor's remaining forces. Better odds, but still not good enough. The mercenaries had superior firepower, defensive positions, and they'd already proven they could hurt werewolves despite the natural advantages. But then a second howl rose to join the first. Different voice, different pack. Silver Moon reinforcements, Hayes reported, his enhanced hearing picking up details the humans couldn't catch. 20-plus contacts from the east. Victor's face went through several expressions before settling on cold fury. Fall back to secondary positions. Prepare for full engagement. Sir, one of his lieutenants called out, maybe we should consider withdrawal. With both packs converging, no retreat. Victor's voice cut like a blade. We finish this here, or we finish it nowhere. Signal the reserve teams. Reserve teams. Kira's blood chilled. Victor had more forces? The radio crackled with responses from positions they hadn't even known existed. Hidden snipers in the trees. Mortar teams on the surrounding ridges. What had looked like a desperate last stand was beginning to feel like a carefully orchestrated massacre. He's been planning this for months, Darius realized. Not just the attack on us, but the response. He knew both packs would send reinforcements. It's a trap, Marcus said flatly. The whole thing. He's going to wipe out the leadership of both packs in one coordinated strike. The first of the Blackthorn reinforcements burst through the treeline, wolves in their animal forms, moving with the fluid grace of apex predators. But they ran straight into a crossfire that had been waiting for them. Silver bullets cut through their ranks like a scythe, dropping 3 wolves before they could even find cover. Tell them to fall back. Kira screamed. It's a trap. But the wolves were already committed, already charging into the kill zone that Victor had prepared for them. And the Silver Moon pack was approaching from the opposite direction, heading straight into their own ambush. We have to warn them, Darius said, then tilted his head back and let loose with an alpha's howl that spoke of danger, ambush, death waiting in the trees. The Silver Moon reinforcements heard it and scattered, but they were already taking fire. More silver bullets, more wolfsbane gas, more of Victor's carefully prepared surprises. In less than 5 minutes, Victor had turned a potential rescue into a slaughter. Status report, he called out, his voice carrying easily across the blood-soaked clearing. 70% enemy casualties, came the reply. Remaining hostiles are pinned down and running low on ammunition. 70%. That meant more than half of both reinforcement packs were dead or dying. Kira felt sick as the magnitude of the disaster sank in. Victor hadn't just attacked 2 packs. He decapitated them. Excellent, Victor said, his voice carrying the satisfaction of a job well done. Begin the final phase. The final phase, it turned out, involved surrounding the survivors and offering them one last chance to surrender. Victor himself approached their position, flanked by a dozen heavily armed mercenaries, his face alight with the glow of victory. Children, he called out, I think we've all learned something valuable today about the cost of defying progress. Your reinforcements are dead. Your packs are broken. Your old way of life is finished. He gestured toward the carnage around them. Bodies scattered across the snow, the acrid smell of cordite and burning flesh, the survivors huddled behind whatever cover they could find. But I'm not unreasonable, Victor continued. Those of you who are left, you have value. Skills that can be put to better use in service of a stronger vision. Kneel now, swear fealty to the new order, and you'll live to see tomorrow. Silence stretched across the clearing. Kira could feel the weight of eyes on her, on Darius, on her father. The survivors looking to their leaders for guidance, for hope, for some sign that this wasn't the end. What about our territories? Hayes asked finally. Our pack lands will be redistributed according to need and merit, Victor replied. Those who prove their loyalty will be rewarded. Those who don't. He shrugged eloquently. And if we refuse? Marcus demanded. Victor's smile was sharp as winter ice. Then you'll join your fallen packmates. The choice is yours, but I'd advise you to choose quickly. My men are getting restless, and silver bullets don't care about last words. Kira looked around at the survivors. Maybe 15 werewolves total from both packs, all of them wounded, exhausted, running on fumes and desperation. Against Victor's remaining forces, it wouldn't even be a fight. But as she watched, something strange began to happen. The survivors weren't looking defeated. They were looking determined, angry, like wolves who'd been backed into a corner and decided that if they were going to die, they'd die fighting. You know what your problem is, Victor? Darius said conversationally, climbing to his feet despite the rifles trained on him. Please enlighten me. You think like a human. Darius stepped out from behind cover, ignoring the red lasers that immediately painted his chest. You see warfare in terms of superior firepower, tactical advantages, force multiplication. Very logical, very systematic, and very effective as you've seen. Against humans, maybe. Darius's smile was all teeth. But you forgot something important about werewolves. Which is, we're not human. Darius threw back his head and howled. Not the warning cry he'd used before, but something deeper, more primal. The sound of an alpha calling his pack to the final hunt. And every surviving werewolf in the clearing answered. The transformation was simultaneous, instantaneous, and terrifying. 15 humans became 15 wolves in the space of a heartbeat, their clothes shredding away as muscle and bone reshaped itself into something built for killing. The mercenaries opened fire, but they were aiming at where humans had been standing, not where wolves were moving. Silver bullets whined through empty air as the pack scattered and attacked within human speed. Kira felt her own shift begin, her wolf surging forward with savage joy. The pain of transformation was nothing compared to the pain of watching her packmates die. Her bones lengthened, her muscles swelled, her senses exploded into hyperclarity. When she opened her eyes, the world was painted in shades of scent and sound that no human could comprehend. And Victor Silvermoon, the man who'd thought he could cage the wolf, was about to learn why their kind had survived every attempt at extinction for the past 10,000 years. The hunt was on. Chapter 9. Blood Moon Rising. The world became a symphony of scent and sound and savage motion. Kira's wolf form hit the ground running, her paws finding purchase on snow-slick earth as silver bullets whined overhead. The mercenaries' training had prepared them for human opponents, maybe even enhanced humans, but nothing in their experience had readied them for the reality of facing actual werewolves in full hunt mode. A wolf was not simply a human with different packaging. A wolf was a perfect killing machine, evolved over millions of years to bring down prey larger and stronger than itself. Enhanced senses that could track a target by scent alone. Reflexes faster than human thought. Jaws that could crush bone and sinew with hydraulic force. And these weren't ordinary wolves. These were alpha bloodlines, each one carrying the accumulated power of generations of pack leaders. Kira saw a mercenary swing his rifle toward her, watched his finger tighten on the trigger, smelled the gun oil and human fear rolling off him in waves. Time seemed to slow as her enhanced reflexes kicked in. She dropped low, felt the bullet part the fur on her back, then launched herself at his throat. The man went down hard, his scream cut short as her jaws found their target. Hot blood filled her mouth, and her wolf sang with savage joy. This was what they were meant for. This was what it meant to be apex predator. Around her, the clearing had become a nightmare of fang and claw and desperate human cries. Hayes, massive in his wolf form, had taken down 2 mercenaries and was working on a third. A Blackthorn warrior she didn't recognize had cornered a sniper behind a fallen tree, the human's silver bullets useless at such close range. But the mercenaries weren't helpless. Even as she watched, one of them managed to put a silver round into a silver moon wolf's shoulder, sending the animal tumbling. Another had grabbed a flamethrower and was spraying liquid fire in wide arcs, forcing the wolves to keep their distance. And Victor had shifted too. His wolf form was huge, even by alpha standards, nearly as large as a small horse, with silver-streaked fur and eyes like winter storms. But there was something wrong with his scent, something that made Kira's hackles rise. The smell of madness, of obsession carried too far. He was stalking through the chaos, ignoring the battle raging around him, his attention fixed on a single target: Darius. The two alpha wolves circled each other in a clear space at the center of the carnage, neither making the first move. This wasn't just about territory or pack politics anymore. This was personal: nephew and uncle, the old guard and the new, two visions of what werewolf society should become. "You always were too soft," Victor snarled, his wolf vocal cords managing a rough approximation of human speech. "Just like your father." "My father was twice the alpha you'll ever be," Darius replied, his own voice a low growl that seemed to come from the earth itself. "Your father is dead." Victor's lips pulled back to reveal fangs like ivory daggers. "And soon, you'll join him." They came together with the sound of thunder, 200 pounds of muscle and bone and fury colliding in midair. Kira felt her heart stop as she watched them roll across the bloody snow, each seeking the killing bite that would end the fight. But she couldn't watch for long. A human was approaching her position, moving with the careful precision of a professional killer. This one was smarter than the others. He'd seen what happened to his comrades who'd tried to face the wolves head-on, and he was keeping his distance, using his rifle's range advantage. Kira feinted left, then bolted right as his shot split the air where she'd been standing. The bullet took bark from a tree behind her, and she could smell the silver scoring as it passed. Too close. Much too close. She needed to get closer, needed to eliminate his range advantage, but the open ground between them offered no cover. Every time she tried to advance, another silver bullet forced her back. That's when Marcus appeared beside her, his massive wolf form materializing from the smoke like an avenging spirit. Her father had always been large, but in wolf form he was truly enormous, the kind of alpha that other predators cross streams to avoid. Together, his scent language said, "Flank him." They moved in perfect coordination, decades of pack dynamics allowing them to communicate without words. Marcus went left, drawing the mercenaries' fire, while Kira circled right. The human tried to track both targets, but humans had never been designed for multitasking under pressure. When he swung his rifle toward Marcus, Kira attacked. When he tried to compensate and swing back toward her, Marcus closed the distance. In the end, it was no contest. Two apex predators against one confused, terrified human. The mercenary went down screaming, and Kira felt a fierce satisfaction at the sound. But the satisfaction was short-lived. Even as they eliminated one threat, she could see that the battle was far from won. Victor had brought more mercenaries than she'd realized, and they were adapting to the wolves' tactics. Flamethrowers and silver bullets were taking their toll, and several of her packmates were down. Worse, Victor seemed to be getting the better of his fight with Darius. The older wolf was larger, more experienced, and apparently more ruthless. As Kira watched, he managed to get his jaws around Darius's throat, and only a desperate twist saved the younger alpha from having his windpipe crushed. "Help him," Marcus's scent commanded. "I'll handle the others." Kira didn't need to be told twice. She launched herself across the clearing, dodging bullets and bodies, her entire focus narrowed to the two wolves locked in mortal combat. She hit Victor from the side with the force of a small avalanche, her momentum carrying all three of them into a tangle of fur and fangs. Victor snarled and snapped at her, his jaws missing her muzzle by inches, but the interruption gave Darius the opening he needed. The younger alpha's counterattack was swift and brutal. His jaws clamped down on Victor's shoulder, and Kira heard bone crack under the pressure. Victor howled in pain and fury, trying to shake free, but Darius held on with grim determination. "The throat," Kira's wolf urged. "Go for the throat while he's distracted." But as she moved to make the killing bite, something stopped her. Not mercy. Victor had forfeited any claim to that when he'd started murdering innocents. It was something else, something that her human mind recognized even if her wolf didn't understand. Victor's scent. There was something wrong with it, something beyond madness or obsession. The smell of sickness.
Disease.
Something that turned her stomach and made her wolf whimper with instinctive revulsion. He's infected, she managed to growl, the words barely recognizable through her transformed vocal cords. Darius's grip loosened slightly. What? Infected? Can't you smell it? Something's wrong with his blood. Victor took advantage of their hesitation to break free, rolling away from them with surprising agility for a wolf his size. When he came to his feet, his lips were pulled back in what might have been a grin. Very good, little bitch, he snarled. I was wondering when someone would notice. Notice what? Darius demanded, but Kira was already backing away from Victor, her wolf's instinct screaming warnings. The virus, Victor said conversationally, as if they were discussing the weather instead of standing in the middle of a battlefield. A lovely little creation from a military bioweapons lab, designed specifically to target werewolf DNA. Horror flooded through Kira's system. A bioweapon. A disease that could kill werewolves. And Victor was infected with it. You're dying, she realized. Oh yes. 6 months to live, maybe less. The fever started 3 weeks ago, and the delirium isn't far behind. Victor's wolf eyes gleamed with fanatic fervor. But I'll live long enough to see my vision realized. Long enough to unite the packs under strong leadership. By killing them, Darius demanded. By saving them from what's coming. Victor began to circle them again, but his movements were less fluid now, less controlled. The disease was affecting his coordination. The humans know about us. They have samples of our blood, our DNA. They're developing weapons that will make silver bullets look like toys. So, you decided to beat them to it? Kira couldn't keep the disgust from her voice. I decided to prepare us for the war that's coming whether we want it or not. Victor's voice was rising, taking on the cadence of a fanatic sermon. United under one alpha, one vision, one purpose, we might survive what they're planning. Divided into squabbling little territories, we'll be extinct within a generation. And if you're wrong? Darius asked. Victor's laugh was like breaking glass. Then we'll all die together. At least that has dignity. The battle was winding down around them. Most of Victor's mercenaries were dead or dying, their superior firepower no match for werewolf fury at close quarters. But the cost had been terrible. Kira could smell the blood of her packmates mixing with that of their enemies, could hear the whimpers of the wounded.
Too many dead.
Too many lives sacrificed for one madman's vision of the future. It's over, Victor, Darius said. Your army is broken. Your conspiracy is exposed. Surrender now, and maybe we can find a cure for whatever they infected you with. Cure. Victor threw back his massive head and howled with laughter. There is no cure, nephew. They made sure of that. This virus is designed to be absolutely fatal to our kind. He was moving again, but not toward them. Toward something at the edge of the clearing, something that Kira's enhanced vision was just beginning to make out through the smoke and chaos. A device. Military-looking, with blinking lights and an ominous electronic hum.
What is that? She demanded.
Victor's grin widened. Insurance policy. You see, even if my army failed, even if my vision was rejected, I could still strike one last blow for werewolf unity. The device's hum was getting louder, and Kira realized with growing horror what she was looking at. It's a bomb. Not just any bomb, Victor confirmed. Military grade, enhanced with silver particulates and a lovely little biological component. When it detonates, it'll spread the virus across a 50-mile radius. Every werewolf pack in the region will be infected within hours. You're insane, Darius breathed. I'm practical. Victor was almost to the device now, his movements becoming more erratic as the fever took hold. If I can't unite the packs in life, I'll unite them in death. At least that way, the humans won't get the satisfaction of hunting us to extinction. Kira and Darius exchanged glances, and she saw her own desperation reflected in his eyes. The device was too far away. Even with Werewolf speed, they'd never reach it before Victor triggered the detonation. But maybe they didn't have to. The mate bond, her wolf whispered. Use the mate bond. She didn't fully understand what her wolf meant, but she could feel it. The connection between her and Darius, stronger now than it had ever been. A link that went beyond scent or sight or sound, something that operated on a level deeper than conscious thought. Trust me, she projected through the bond, hoping he could feel what she was feeling. Darius's response came back immediately, always. They moved as one, their timing perfect despite the lack of verbal coordination. Darius went high, launching himself in a massive leap that carried him over Victor's head. Kira went low, sliding under the older wolf's desperate swipe at her flanks. Victor spun, trying to track both threats, but he was too sick, too disoriented by fever and madness. His reflexes were a half-second too slow, his judgment compromised by the virus eating away at his brain. Kira reached the device first, her jaws clamping down on the detonator assembly. The taste of metal and circuitry filled her mouth, but she held on, applying pressure until she heard the satisfying crunch of breaking electronics. Behind her, she heard Victor scream in rage and despair as his final gambit crumbled to pieces. When she turned around, she found Darius standing over Victor's still form, blood dripping from his jaws. The older wolf wasn't moving. "Is he?" she began. "Dead," Darius confirmed grimly. "The virus was killing him anyway. I just hastened the process." The clearing had fallen silent except for the moans of the wounded. The battle was over. Victor's conspiracy ended, but Kira felt no triumph. Only exhaustion and the bitter taste of too much blood. It's finished, she thought. Finally finished. But even as the thought formed, she caught a scent on the wind that made her blood run cold. More humans. Many more humans. And they were coming fast. The war, it seemed, was just beginning. Chapter 10. Government Wolves. The sound of helicopters filled the air, multiple aircraft, military grade, approaching fast from the south. Kira's enhanced hearing picked up the details that human ears would miss. The heavy thrum of twin rotors, the whine of turbine engines, the radio chatter between pilots coordinating their approach. "Everyone shift back," Darius commanded, his alpha voice cutting through the post-battle chaos.
"Now."
Before they arrive. The transformation was agony after the extended time in wolf form. Bones shortened, muscles compressed, and Kira's enhanced senses dulled back to merely human levels. When it was over, she found herself naked and shivering in the snow, along with 14 other equally naked werewolves. "Clothes," Marcus said tersely, and the survivors scattered to recover what they could from the battlefield. Most of their clothing had been shredded during the shift, but there were jackets and pants scattered among the fallen mercenaries. Kira pulled on a tactical vest that smelled of gun oil and human sweat, trying not to think about its previous owner. The vest was too large and still warm with residual body heat, but it covered the essentials. "Federal agents," Hayes reported, his nose still sensitive enough to catch scents on the wind. "But not just fish and wildlife. This smells like military. Special operations." "How many?" Darius asked, struggling into a pair of combat pants. "Hard to tell. At least 30, probably more. 30 federal agents, armed and trained, descending on a battlefield littered with bodies and evidence of supernatural combat. This was either a rescue or another kind of trap entirely. "What's our story?" one of the Silver Moon warriors asked. Marcus and Darius exchanged glances, and Kira could see them thinking the same thing. There was no story that would explain this level of carnage, no cover story that would account for the claw marks and the way some of the mercenaries had died. The truth, Darius decided. Or, at least part of it. The helicopters were visible now, 3 of them, black military aircraft that looked like they'd been designed for war zones rather than rescue operations. They circled the clearing once, assessing the situation, then began to descend. "Remember," Marcus called out over the rotor wash. Victor was the threat. "We were defending ourselves." Everything else is classified pack business. The helicopters touch down in a loose triangle around the clearing, their rotors continuing to spin as armed figures rappelled from the open doors. Not FBI or Fish and Wildlife, Kira realized, but actual military special forces. The kind of soldiers who dealt with problems that officially didn't exist. The team leader approached with his weapon ready but not aimed, his eyes taking in the scene with professional assessment. He was tall, lean, with a kind of weathered face that spoke of years in dangerous places. When he spoke, his voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "I'm Colonel James Harrison, U.S. Army Special Activities Division," he announced. "Which of you is Alpha Marcus Blackthorne?" Marcus stepped forward, his own authority matching the colonel's despite his disheveled appearance. "I am. And you're trespassing on sovereign pack territory." "Not anymore." Harrison held up a tablet displaying what looked like a federal warrant. As of 6 hours ago, this entire region has been declared a federal disaster zone under the Supernatural Species Protection Act. Your pack lands are now under military jurisdiction. "On what grounds?" Darius demanded, moving to stand beside Marcus. "On the grounds that an unknown biological agent has been deployed in the area, representing a clear and present danger to both human and supernatural populations." Harrison's gaze swept the clearing, taking in the bodies, the destroyed vehicles, the lingering smell of cordite and blood. "We're here to contain the threat and evacuate any survivors." Biological agent. Kira's blood chilled as she remembered Victor's confession about the virus. Had some of it been released during the battle? Was everyone here already infected? "What kind of biological agent?" she asked. Harrison's attention focused on her with laser intensity. "And you are Kira Blackthorne, the Alpha's daughter." "Ms. Blackthorne." Harrison consulted his tablet again. "According to our intelligence, you've been missing for approximately 18 hours. Where have you been?" The question was casual, but Kira could hear the weight behind it. This wasn't a rescue operation, it was an interrogation. "She's been with me," Darius said firmly. "Under my protection during the storm and subsequent attack." "Darius Silvermoon, I presume?" Harrison made a note on his tablet. "Alpha of the Silvermoon Pack. Interesting that you two would be together, given the historical antagonism between your families." "Circumstances change," Marcus said carefully. "Indeed they do." Harrison gestured toward his soldiers, who were spreading out to secure the perimeter. "We'll need to debrief each of you separately. Standard procedure for bioweapon incidents." "Bioweapon?" Hayes stepped forward. "What makes you think?" "The fact that we've been monitoring Victor Silvermoon's activities for the past 3 months," Harrison interrupted. "Ever since he made contact with certain foreign agents interested in acquiring samples of werewolf DNA." The words hit like physical blows. Foreign agents. DNA samples. Victor's conspiracy had been even larger than they'd realized. "You knew," Kira said, the pieces falling into place. "You knew what he was planning, and you let it happen." Harrison's expression didn't change. "We knew he was attempting to acquire biological weapons. We didn't know he intended to use them against his own people." "So you used us as bait," Darius snarled, his alpha nature responding to the threat even in human form. "We used the situation to gather intelligence about a potential terrorist threat," Harrison corrected. "The fact that you managed to neutralize Victor before he could deploy his weapons was fortunate." "Fortunate?" Kira wanted to laugh or scream, or shift back to wolf form and tear out the colonel's throat. Fortunate that 2 packs had nearly been wiped out. Fortunate that dozens of werewolves were dead. Fortunate that she and Darius had been forced to mate in front of their enemies to prevent a legal challenge that would have gotten them both killed. "Where's Victor's body?" Harrison asked. "Over there." Marcus pointed toward the far edge of the clearing, where Victor's wolf form lay motionless among the scattered debris. Harrison signaled to one of his soldiers, who approached the body with what looked like a biological containment unit. "We'll need to run tests, determine the extent of the viral contamination." "What happens to us?" Hayes asked. "Quarantine protocols," Harrison replied. 21 days in a secure facility while we monitor for signs of infection. Standard procedure for bioweapon exposure. 21 days. 3 weeks locked up in a government facility, separated from their packs, probably subjected to tests and experiments under the guise of medical monitoring. And if we refuse? Darius asked. Harrison's smile was thin as winter ice. The Supernatural Species Protection Act gives us broad authority in situations like this. Refusal isn't really an option. More helicopters were arriving now, larger transport aircraft designed to carry prisoners rather than soldiers. Kira could see the writing on the wall. They'd survived Victor's conspiracy only to walk into a government trap. But before anyone could protest further, a new voice cut across the clearing. Actually, Colonel, I think you'll find that it is. The speaker was a woman in her 50s, dressed in an expensive suit that looked completely out of place on a battlefield. She walked with the kind of confidence that came from wielding serious power, and the federal agents stepped aside to let her pass without being asked. Senator Patricia Walsh, she introduced herself, chair of the Senate Subcommittee on Supernatural Affairs. And you, Colonel, are operating outside your authority. Harrison's face flushed. Senator, with respect, this is a military operation. This is a violation of the Supernatural Species Protection Act, Walsh interrupted. Specifically Section 12, which guarantees autonomous pack governments the right to handle internal disputes without federal interference. She pulled out her own tablet, displaying what looked like a court order. As of 1 hour ago, I have an injunction from the Federal District Court prohibiting any military action on sovereign pack lands without explicit congressional authorization. The biological weapon, Harrison began, has been contained and neutralized by the pack members themselves, Walsh finished. I see no evidence of viral deployment, no signs of contamination, and no justification for quarantine protocols. Kira exchanged glances with Darius and her father. Political rescue was the last thing she'd expected, but she wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth. Senator, Marcus said carefully, we appreciate your intervention, but may I ask how you knew we needed assistance? Walsh's smile was sharp as a blade. Let's just say that certain parties have been monitoring the situation and decided that federal overreach was becoming a problem. Certain parties. More players in a game that was getting more complex by the hour. This isn't over, Harrison warned, but he was already signaling his troops to withdraw. The biological threat is real, and it won't stay contained forever. Then perhaps you should focus on finding the source rather than harassing the victims, Walsh suggested sweetly. The military forces withdrew as quickly as they'd arrived, leaving the werewolves alone with the senator and her small security detail. When the helicopters were gone, Walsh turned to address the survivors. You're all free to go, she said, but I'd recommend leaving the area quickly. Colonel Harrison will be back with proper authorization within hours, and next time, I won't be able to intervene. Who are you really?
Kira asked.
And why did you help us? Walsh's eyes glinted with something that might have been amusement. Let's just say that there are those in government who believe that cooperation serves everyone's interests better than confrontation. She handed Marcus a business card. If you're interested in learning more about certain mutual benefit arrangements, call that number. But not for at least a week. You'll all need time to process what's happened here. With that cryptic statement, she and her people departed, leaving the werewolves alone in the bloody clearing with more questions than answers. Well, Hayes said finally, that was unexpected. Everything about the last 24 hours has been unexpected, Darius replied. He turned to Kira, and she could see the weight of leadership settling back onto his shoulders. We need to get our people medical attention, secure our territories, and figure out what comes next. What comes next, Marcus said grimly, is that we're in a new world. Victor was right about one thing the humans know about us now. The game has changed. Kira looked around at the survivors, bloodied, exhausted, but alive. Blackthorn and Silvermoon wolves standing together, united by necessity and forged in battle. Whatever came next, they'd face it as allies. As mates. The thought sent a warm pulse through the bond she shared with Darius, and when he looked at her, she saw the same realization in his eyes. They'd survived the conspiracy, the battle, and the government intervention. Now they had to figure out how to build a future from the ashes of the old world. But first, they had wounded to tend and dead to mourn. The work of alpha pairs was never finished. Together, they began the long walk home. Chapter 11. Healing and Hunger. The Blackthorn Pack compound had never seen so many Silvermoon wolves within its borders. Under normal circumstances, their presence would have triggered territorial disputes that could last for generations. But nothing about the past 48 hours had been normal. Kira stood in the main lodge's great room, watching as pack members from both sides worked together to tend the wounded. Dr. Sarah Chen, the Blackthorn Pack's physician, moved between patients with efficient competence, her hands steady despite the exhaustion that lined her face. "How bad?" Kira asked as Sarah finished suturing a deep gash on Hayes' shoulder. 3 critical, 7 serious, 12 walking wounded, Sarah replied without looking up. "We've lost 4 from your father's pack and 3 from the Silvermoon group. It could have been much worse."
7 dead.
7 packmates who would never see another full moon, never feel the rush of the hunt, never laugh around the common fire. The number sat in Kira's chest like a stone. The critical cases? Stable for now, but I need real medical facilities. This field medicine approach has its limits. Sarah finally looked up, and Kira could see the strain in her eyes. 2 of them need surgery I can't perform here. The nearest hospital is 40 miles away, Marcus said, approaching from across the room. And they'll ask questions we can't answer about the nature of the injuries. It was an old problem for their kind. Werewolf physiology healed faster than human medicine expected, but not fast enough to avoid awkward questions about rapid recovery from supposedly fatal wounds. And some injuries, particularly those involving silver, required treatment that human doctors weren't equipped to provide. "There's a supernatural medical clinic in Portland," Darius offered. "Discreet, well-equipped, staffed by people who understand our needs." 3-hour drive in good weather, Marcus said dubiously. "With wounded that critical. I'll call ahead, have them send a medical transport. Helicopter with a full surgical team." Darius was already pulling out his phone. "It'll be here within the hour." The easy authority in his voice reminded Kira that he wasn't just her mate. He was an alpha in his own right, accustomed to making life and death decisions for his people. It was strange watching him operate in her family's territory, stranger still to realize how natural it felt. "Thank you," Marcus said simply. It was the first time Kira had heard her father address Darius without hostility, and she could see the significance wasn't lost on either alpha. A small step, perhaps, but an important one. Dr. Chen returned to her patients, and Marcus moved away to check on other matters, leaving Kira and Darius momentarily alone. The great room buzzed with activity around them, but for a moment it felt like they were the only 2 people in the world. "How are you holding up?" Darius asked quietly. The question was simple, but the answer was anything but. Physically, she was fine. A few cuts and bruises, nothing that wouldn't heal within hours. Emotionally, that was more complicated. "I keep thinking about Elena," she admitted. "About the look in her eyes when she died. She really believed she was doing the right thing." "Victor was very convincing," Darius said gently. He had decades to perfect his arguments, to find the fears and uncertainties that would make people listen. But she was family. The words came out more bitter than Kira had intended. "My father's brother's daughter. We grew up together, played together, trained together. How could she choose a stranger over her own blood?" Darius was quiet for a long moment, his gray eyes thoughtful. Maybe she didn't see it as choosing a stranger. Maybe she saw it as choosing the future over the past. The insight was uncomfortable but probably accurate. Elena had always been ambitious, always pushing for more influence within the pack hierarchy. Victor's vision of a unified werewolf nation would have appealed to someone who felt constrained by traditional territorial boundaries. "Do you think he was right?"
Kira asked.
"About what's coming? About humans developing weapons to hunt us?" "I think he was right about the threat," Darius said carefully, "but wrong about the solution. Unity through fear and conquest isn't sustainable. Eventually, people rebel against tyrants, no matter how strong they are. And unity through alliance? Through cooperation. That's harder to achieve, but it lasts longer when you do." He reached out and took her hand, his fingers warm against her skin. Look around this room. 48 hours ago, these people would have killed each other on sight. Now they're sharing medical supplies and watching each other's backs. He was right. Kira could see it in the way a Silver Moon warrior was helping a Blackthorn pack member reach a water bottle, in the shared glances of understanding between former enemies who'd fought side by side against a common threat. The mate bond, she said suddenly. That's what changed things, isn't it? Not the external threat, but the alliance between us. Darius nodded. Pack psychology is built around family structures. When two families intermarry, it creates kinship bonds that override territorial instincts. Your pack mates see me as family now, not enemy. And vice versa? My people would die for you, he said simply. You're their alpha female now, whether you realize it or not. Alpha female. The title sent a strange thrill through her, part excitement and part terror. She'd been raised to inherit leadership of the Blackthorn pack, but the Silver Moon group was different, larger, more militaristic, with traditions that went back centuries. I don't know their customs, she said. Their laws, their hierarchy, their sacred sites. You'll learn. We'll teach you. Darius's voice carried absolute confidence. And in return, you'll teach us about Blackthorn traditions. That's how alliances work. Before she could respond, a commotion near the lodge's entrance drew their attention. Marcus was speaking with someone at the door, a woman in expensive outdoor gear, who definitely wasn't pack. Kira, Marcus called out. Could you come here, please? The woman turned as Kira approached, and she found herself looking at someone who could have been a relative, same dark hair, same storm gray eyes, same predatory grace that marked her as definitely not human. Kira Blackthorn, the woman said, extending a hand. I'm Dr. Amanda Cross. I believe we have a great deal to discuss. Dr. Cross is with the Lycanthrope Research Institute, Marcus explained, but his tone suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable with her presence. Never heard of it, Kira said honestly. Most people haven't. We're a specialized organization that studies werewolf physiology and psychology, particularly as it relates to mate bonding and pack dynamics. Dr. Cross's smile was professional but warm. Senator Walsh suggested I speak with you about recent developments. Senator Walsh again. The mysterious political figure who'd rescued them from military detention seemed to have her fingers in a lot of pies. What kind of developments? Darius asked, moving to stand beside Kira. The kind that could change everything we thought we knew about werewolf society, Dr. Cross replied. May we speak privately? Marcus looked like he wanted to object, but Kira made the decision for him. We'll use the study. Dad, could you make sure Dr. Chun has everything she needs for the wounded? It was a polite dismissal, and Marcus clearly recognized it as such. He nodded reluctantly and moved away, leaving Kira and Darius to escort Dr. Cross to the lodge's private study. The room was smaller than the great room but more intimate, with leather chairs arranged around a fireplace and shelves lined with books on pack law and werewolf history. Dr. Cross settled into one of the chairs with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable in her own skin. First things first, she said without preamble. The mate bond between you two is unprecedented. Unprecedented how?
Kira asked.
In its strength, its speed of formation, and most importantly, its potential applications. Dr. Cross pulled out a tablet and began scrolling through what looked like medical charts. We've been monitoring werewolf mate bonds for decades, and we've never seen anything like what you two have developed. Monitoring. Darius's voice carried a dangerous edge. With full consent and cooperation from the participants, Dr. Cross assured him quickly. The Institute works closely with several pack leaders who understand the value of scientific research into our unique characteristics.
Our.
Kira filed that pronoun away for later consideration. What makes our bond different, she asked. Range, for one thing. Most mate bonds require physical proximity to function effectively, within a few hundred yards at most. But yesterday, during the battle with Victor's forces, you two were coordinating across distances that should have been impossible. That was true. Kira remembered the moment when she and Darius had moved in perfect synchronization to stop Victor's bomb, despite being separated by half the clearing. Intensity is another factor, Dr. Cross continued. Normal mate bonds develop over weeks or months of close contact. Yours seems to have reached full strength within hours. 48 hours, Darius said quietly. From first meeting to... He gestured vaguely between them. Exactly. Which brings us to the most interesting aspect, the ability to share not just emotions and general intentions, but specific tactical information. Dr. Cross leaned forward, her eyes bright with scientific curiosity. In military applications alone, the implications are staggering. Military applications. Kira felt a chill run down her spine. You want to weaponize mate bonds? I want to understand them, Dr. Cross corrected. The weaponization is probably inevitable, but if we can study the phenomenon properly, we might be able to ensure it's used responsibly. And if we refuse to participate? Darius asked. Dr. Cross's expression grew more serious. Then other people will study you without your knowledge or consent. People with fewer scruples and different agendas. She paused, letting that sink in. Senator Walsh isn't the only government figure interested in werewolf affairs. There are others who see your kind as either a resource to be exploited or a threat to be eliminated. Like Colonel Harrison? Harrison is military, focused on immediate tactical concerns. The people I'm worried about think in terms of decades and centuries. They're already developing contingency plans for what they call the werewolf problem. The werewolf problem. As if an entire species could be reduced to a bureaucratic challenge. What are you proposing?
Kira asked.
Partnership. The Institute provides protection, resources, and political cover in exchange for your cooperation with our research. We study your bond, document its capabilities, and develop safeguards to prevent its abuse. And in return, your people survive the coming changes. Because, make no mistake, the secret is out. Too many humans know about werewolves now for the old ways to continue. The question is whether the transition happens through cooperation or conquest. Dr. Cross stood, leaving her tablet on the table between them. Think about it. Discuss it with your pack leaders. But don't take too long. Events are moving faster than anyone anticipated. She moved toward the door, then paused. One more thing. The medical transport for your wounded will arrive within the hour, but I'd recommend increased security around your territories. Victor may be dead, but his foreign contacts are still very much alive. With that ominous warning, she left, leaving Kira and Darius alone with more questions than answers. What do you think? Kira asked. I think we're in deeper water than we realized, Darius replied. And I think we're going to need all the allies we can get. Outside, the sound of approaching helicopters filled the air, the medical transport Dr. Cross had mentioned. Through the study's windows, Kira could see pack members preparing to load the most critically wounded. Life was moving forward, as it always did after tragedy. People would heal, territories would be rebuilt, and the daily work of survival would continue. But underneath it all, she could feel the currents of change pulling them toward an uncertain future. Whatever came next, at least they'd face it together. The mate bond pulsed between them, warm and steady as a heartbeat, and for the first time since this whole nightmare began, Kira allowed herself to believe that might be enough. Chapter 12. New Moon Rising. 3 weeks later, Kira stood on the observation deck of the Blackthorn Lodge, watching the sun set over the merged territories of two packs that had been enemies for longer than anyone could remember. The view had changed dramatically since the battle at the ranger station. New construction, expanded boundaries, and the constant movement of wolves who now traveled freely between lands that had once been forbidden to them. Second thoughts? Darius asked, joining her at the railing. About which part? The alliance, the mating, or agreeing to let government scientists study our bond? She leaned into his warmth, still marveling at how natural the gesture felt. All of it. Any of it. His arms settled around her waist, and she could feel the steady pulse of the mate bond between them, stronger now than ever, but also more controlled. 3 weeks of practice had taught them how to modulate the connection, to share what they wanted to share while maintaining their individual identities. No second thoughts, she said firmly. Complications, yes. Regrets, no. And it was true. The past 3 weeks had been a whirlwind of changes that would have seemed impossible a month ago. The formal alliance ceremony between the Blackthorn and Silvermoon packs. The joint council meetings where former enemies hammered out territorial agreements and resource-sharing protocols. The constant stream of visitors, other alpha pairs, government officials, researchers from Dr. Cross's institute. Most challenging of all, the complete restructuring of their daily lives to accommodate 2 packs learning to function as one. The Portland pack accepted our invitation, Darius reported. Alpha Martinez says they're interested in exploring a mutual defense agreement. That makes 4. Kira counted on her fingers. Portland, Olympic Peninsula, Cascade Range, and the Vancouver Group. If they all join the alliance, we'll have a unified werewolf nation stretching from Northern California to Southern British Columbia, Darius finished. Exactly what Victor wanted, just achieved through cooperation instead of conquest. The irony wasn't lost on either of them. Victor's vision of werewolf unity was becoming reality, but through the very methods he dismissed as weakness. Alliance through marriage, cooperation through shared interests, strength through voluntary association rather than forced subjugation. Any word from Dr. Cross about the research results?
Kira asked.
The preliminary report arrived this morning. Darius's voice carried a note of curiosity mixed with concern. Our bond is apparently even more unusual than she initially thought. Dr. Cross's team had been studying them for 2 weeks now, using sophisticated equipment to measure everything from brainwave patterns during communication to the biochemical changes that occurred when they used the mate bond tactically. The process was less invasive than Kira had feared, but the implications of what they were learning were staggering. How unusual. According to her measurements, our bond operates on frequencies that shouldn't be possible for werewolf neurology. It's almost like... Darius paused, searching for the right words. Like we're evolving, developing new capabilities in response to environmental pressures. Evolution. The word sent a chill down Kira's spine, but also a strange thrill of excitement. Were they witnessing the birth of something new? An adaptation that would allow their kind to survive in a world where humans possessed increasingly sophisticated weapons? There's more, Darius continued. She thinks the bond might be transmissible. Not the specific connection between us, but the template, the enhanced capabilities. Meaning other mated pairs might be able to develop similar abilities, if they know what to look for. The alliance we're building could become something unprecedented, a network of telepathically linked alpha pairs coordinating across vast distances. The possibilities were both thrilling and terrifying. On one hand, such a network could revolutionize werewolf society, allowing for coordination and cooperation on a scale never before imagined. On the other hand, it could also make them targets for human forces who saw enhanced werewolves as an existential threat. Speaking of the alliance, Kira said, "My father wants to discuss the leadership structure before the other packs arrive tomorrow." The formal alliance ceremony was scheduled for the new moon, symbolic of new beginnings and fresh starts. Representatives from 6 different packs would gather to sign the accords that would create the first inter-pack confederation in North American werewolf history. "Let me guess," Darius said dryly. "He wants to make sure his daughter isn't subordinated to some foreign alpha's authority. Actually, he wants to make sure we establish clear succession protocols. What happens if one of us dies? Do the packs revert to independence, or does the surviving mate maintain authority over both territories?" It was a practical concern, but also a deeply personal one. The mate bond had made them partners in every sense of the word, but it had also created potential complications that traditional pack law hadn't anticipated. "What do you think?" Darius asked. Kira considered the question carefully. "I think we need to be realistic about the dangers we're facing. Victor proved that there are werewolves willing to use violence to achieve their goals. Colonel Harrison showed us that there are humans who see us as either resources or threats. And Dr. Cross has made it clear that there are other government factions we haven't even met yet. So you're saying..." "I'm saying we need to build something that can survive the loss of any individual leader. Something bigger than just our personal bond." She turned to face him fully, her hands settling on his chest where she could feel his heartbeat. "We need to create a system that empowers others to carry on if we can't. Darius nodded slowly. Distributed authority. Multiple alpha pairs sharing leadership responsibilities. No single points of failure.
Exactly.
And if Dr. Cross is right about the bond being transmissible, we need to start training other mated couples immediately. Build redundancy into the system. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the first stars appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere in the forest below, wolves were beginning their evening hunt, not just blackthorn or silvermoon wolves, but members of both packs running together under the same moon. Kira, Darius said quietly, there's something else we need to discuss. The serious tone in his voice made her look up sharply. What is it? Senator Walsh called this afternoon. There's been a development with Victor's foreign contacts. Kira felt her stomach clench. They'd known this was coming. Victor's conspiracy had involved players beyond just disgruntled werewolves and ambitious mercenaries. But they'd hoped to have more time to prepare. How bad? 3 werewolf packs in Eastern Europe have gone dark in the past week. No communication, no response to traditional greeting protocols, nothing. Intelligence suggests they were hit by military forces using advanced bioweapons. The virus. Victor's dying gift to the world, refined and weaponized by people who saw werewolves as nothing more than test subjects. How advanced? She asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know the answer. Advanced enough that normal werewolf healing factors can't fight off the infection. Advanced enough that entire packs are dying within hours of exposure. Darius's voice was grim. Walsh thinks the attacks are field tests, preparation for a larger deployment. Against us. Against every werewolf pack in North America. The theory is that they're planning simultaneous strikes across the continent, designed to eliminate our entire population within a matter of days. Genocide. The word hung between them like a curse. When?
Kira asked.
Unknown. Could be weeks, could be months. But Walsh's intelligence suggests they're moving into final preparation phases. Then we accelerate our timeline, Kira decided. The alliance ceremony happens as planned, but we also start war preparations immediately. Food stores, medical supplies, defensive positions, communication networks. Everything we'll need to survive a prolonged siege. And the research with Dr. Cross gets top priority. If enhanced mate bonds are going to be our edge in this fight, we need to develop them as quickly as possible. Kira's mind was already racing ahead, calculating resources and timelines. How many mated pairs do we have access to? Currently, maybe a dozen across all the packs we're working with. But if we can demonstrate the capabilities, we'll have volunteers lining up around the block, Kira finished. Survival is a powerful motivator. They spent the next hour planning, their voices low and urgent as they worked through logistics and contingencies. By the time they finished, the forest below was fully dark, lit only by the glow of the lodge's windows and the distant flicker of campfires where pack members gathered for the evening meal. There's one more thing, Darius said as they prepared to head inside. What now? Dr. Cross thinks our bond might have applications beyond just tactical coordination. She thinks it could be the key to developing immunity to the bioweapons. Kira stared at him. Immunity how? The enhanced connection seems to boost immune system function in both partners. Not just physically, but on a cellular level that could resist viral modification. Darius's expression was cautiously hopeful. It's still theoretical, but if she's right, we might be able to save our entire species. The magnitude of it was almost too large to comprehend. But that means we're not just building an alliance or fighting a war, Darius confirmed. We're literally evolving, becoming something new in response to an existential threat. Evolution, survival, the future of their kind. No pressure at all. Kira looked out over the merged territories one more time, watching the lights of 2 packs that had learned to become one. Tomorrow, those lights would be joined by others as the alliance expanded. And in the weeks and months to come, they'd either succeed in building something strong enough to survive what was coming, or they'd all die trying. But they wouldn't die alone. And they wouldn't die without a fight. Come on, she said, taking Darius's hand. We have a future to build. The mate bond pulsed between them as they walked back toward the lodge, warm and steady and absolutely unbreakable. Whatever came next, they'd face it together, as partners, as leaders, as the first pair in a new kind of werewolf society. Behind them, the new moon rose over lands that had never known peace between their peoples. Ahead of them, the lights of the lodge beckoned with the promise of home, family, and a love strong enough to change the world. The storm had passed, but the real work was just beginning. And Kira Blackthorn Silvermoon, for she'd taken both names now, symbolizing the union of two bloodlines, had never been more ready for a challenge. The future was theirs to write, one choice at a time. 6 months later, the communications center hummed with quiet efficiency as reports flowed in from across the continent. Kira stood before a wall-mounted display showing the current status of 43 allied packs, her attention focused on the tactical updates streaming across multiple screens. Portland Pack reports successful integration of enhanced mate bond protocols, Hayes announced from his position at the central console. He'd adapted surprisingly well to his new role as Alliance Communications Director. That brings us to 37 active enhanced pairs. Excellent. Kira made a note on her tablet. Any word from the Vancouver group about their defensive preparations? Construction is ahead of schedule. They'll have full bunker facilities operational within 2 weeks. 2 weeks. With luck, it would be enough. The bioweapon attacks had accelerated over the past month, with entire packs across Europe and Asia falling silent. But the alliance had held, and more importantly, it had grown. What had started as a desperate alliance between two rival packs had become a continental network of cooperating werewolf communities, all linked by enhanced mate bonds and unified command structures. Kira. Darius appeared beside her, his expression grim. We just received confirmation. The eastern seaboard attacks begin tomorrow. She'd known it was coming, but the reality still hit like a physical blow. 15 werewolf packs along the Atlantic coast, all targeted for simultaneous elimination by forces using Victor's virus in enhanced form. Our people. Already in position. Enhanced mate pairs coordinating defense, medical teams standing by with the immunity treatments, backup forces ready to deploy. Darius's hand found hers, and she felt the familiar pulse of their bond. We're as ready as we'll ever be. Ready. After 6 months of preparation, planning, and desperate scientific research, they were about to find out whether their new society could survive its first real test. Dr. Cross confirms the immunity protocols are fully effective, Darius continued. 100% success rate in trials, no adverse side effects, and enhancement appears to be permanent. Enhanced werewolves with bioweapon immunity, linked by telepathic bonds that allowed for instantaneous coordination across vast distances. It was either the salvation of their species or the beginning of something that would make them targets for even more sophisticated human weapons. Signal all Alliance packs, Kira decided. Battle protocols are now active. We hold our territories, we protect our people, and we show the world that werewolves don't die quietly. Yes, Alpha, Hayes replied, his fingers already flying over the communication controls.
Alpha.
The title still felt strange sometimes, but Kira had grown into it over the past months. She was no longer just the heir to the Blackthorn Pack or even Darius's mate. She was a leader in her own right, commanding the respect and loyalty of wolves who'd never known her father's authority. Whatever happens tomorrow, Darius said quietly, we've built something amazing here. He was right. The Alliance headquarters bustling around them represented a new kind of werewolf society, one based on cooperation rather than competition, unity rather than isolation, hope rather than fear. Even if they lost the coming battle, the idea would survive. Other packs would carry on the work, building on what they'd started. But Kira had no intention of losing. Signal from the Pacific Northwest Coalition, Hayes called out. All enhanced pairs report ready status. They're requesting permission to begin preemptive operations. Granted, Kira replied. Remind them, we're not just defending anymore. We're taking the fight to them. Because that was the other thing they'd learned over the past months. Enhanced mate bonds weren't just defensive tools. Used properly, They turned werewolf pairs into something approaching a supernatural special forces unit. Fast, coordinated, and absolutely lethal when protecting their own. The enemy had bioweapons and military technology. The Alliance had something better, an entire species that had decided it was tired of hiding and ready to fight for its right to exist. Countdown to Eastern operations? Kira asked. 18 hours, 14 minutes, Darius replied. 18 hours until they learned whether their new world would survive to see another sunrise. Kira looked around the command center one more time, taking in the sight of wolves from dozens of different packs working together with seamless efficiency. Then she squeezed Darius's hand and felt the warm pulse of the bond that had started all of this. "Let's go in a war," she said. The mate bond sang between them, carrying with it the certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it as they'd faced everything else, together, stronger than the sum of their parts, and absolutely unbreakable. The storm that had brought them together was long over. But the future they'd built from its ashes was just beginning. And it was going to be magnificent.
The end.